Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Transfer Talk show on Football Talk podcast. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. It's been a while since we've done a Transfer Talk show, so thank you for being patient. It's been, I think, a couple of weeks since we done the last episode. Of course, unfortunately, due to Josh's passing, I thought it was not the right time to be discussing transfers. But, in terms of this week, there has been some developments with regards to Liverpool potentially signing a new striker, plus other news surrounding our own players that may be on the verge of moving away from Liverpool. So we'll discuss that later on in the show. So let's start with the first rumor. And if you haven't been made aware, Liverpool are on the verge of signing a new striker in the form of Hugo Ekitike. So the latest is that Liverpool have placed a bid in the region of £70 million. Now, that offer has not been accepted, but they're currently negotiating. Maybe Frankfurt want more money involved. I'm not entirely sure. It's not being communicated clearly at the minute, but there are discussions between the two clubs. It's been ongoing. They're probably negotiating the payment structure and the add-ons and all that sort of stuff. But Liverpool are moving fast and they want to wrap this deal up by the end of this week, as the squad fly out to Japan next week for our pre-season preparations. So my thoughts on the potential signing of Hugo Ekitike. I've mentioned him quite a few times over the last few weeks. I like the striker, I really do. My only reservation would be that I don't think he's quite the 20, 30 goal striker that we probably want in our team. However, I don't think he's far off. He's probably on the cusp of being at that level, uh, similar to when we probably signed Mane and Salah, where they were very, very good at their previous clubs in Southampton and Roma. But under Jurgen Klopp, they evolved and eventually, became world class due to hard work and determination. So I can see that happening with Ekitike. I feel like he's got all the tools in the box to become one of the best strikers in Europe. And when I say one of the best, I'm thinking, maybe in the next couple of years. Now, am I disappointed that we didn't get the deal done for Isak? Yes, I have to admit I am, because he was my sort of dream signing, but not entirely. And the reason why I say not entirely is because I think Liverpool have conducted things the right way in regards to the approach and liaising with Newcastle. We made an inquiry about the player to see if he was available, and it's not been clear cut that they rejected any approach or anything like that. But it's quite evident that Newcastle weren't willing to do any business. So as a club, we moved forward and started liaising with another club for our next target, which happens to be Newcastle's primary target in Hugo Ekitike. Now, some Newcastle fans have been quite shameless online about this whole situation in the last couple of days, and today as well in particular. They've been saying that Liverpool have been mugged off, that they were playing 4D chess, and their approach to Ekitike was a smokescreen, and we kind of bought into their bluff and ended up making a bid for Ekitike. Well, let's be honest, that's a complete load of nonsense. As it wasn't that long ago, Newcastle fans were quick to say, "Oh, they're ready to switch it up to a 4-4-2 with Isak and Ekitike up top, leading the line, and they're gonna win the league." That's the energy that they have. So where's that gone all of a sudden? And let's make thing one clear as well. We didn't get rejected by Isak. For all we know, Isak wants to move to Liverpool, but he was in that position where he felt like he couldn't do a transfer request and wanted to be respectful and let the two clubs, have a discussion and try and come to some sort of agreement if there was a possibility. But what we do know in this current situation is that Hugo Ekitike rejected Newcastle United. He informed Frankfurt that he's only interested in a move to Liverpool. That's why Newcastle never improved on their first offer that got turned down a couple of days ago. Newcastle fans will tell you, we didn't want him anyway. Well, that's incorrect again. They've been after Ekitike for about 3 years now, and he's rejected them once again. Now, you may have kept your star striker for now, so congrats for doing that. But from a neutral point of view, I think, honestly, Newcastle may have fumbled this situation, and because of that, they won't be receiving a big payday for the sale of Isak. That money could have gone on to strengthen their squad and made their team a lot stronger. And I think they could have challenged for big honors, maybe even challenged for the title. The way fans are talking right now, it could have been a possibility if they'd accepted that bid, and they could have used that money very wisely and addressed certain weaknesses in their squad. But I guess we'll never know, as I don't think Newcastle have the finances to make huge big bids like they did for Ekitike for multiple players. And now they're probably looking at the market and trying to find a suitable striker to come into the league. Just give me 1 second, guys. I need to plug in my laptop. Uh, let me- I'll be back in 1 second. Apologies, had to quickly do that before my computer turned off altogether. But back to what I was saying. Um, it's interesting now what Newcastle will do going forward because their prime target was Ekitike. Whether they are changing formation or not remains to be seen, but they are definitely in the market for a striker because Callum Wilson has just left on a free transfer. Um, so the big question is, who do they go for now? Because I've said it for a number of weeks, the striker market isn't great. Whether you're Liverpool or Newcastle are a respectable team and they are in the Champions League, so they are going to try and sign a good level quality of a striker. And funny enough, a few hours ago, it was reported that Newcastle are considering a bid for Darwin Nunez. Now, how funny is that? The player that Newcastle fans have been ridiculing online, that player could actually end up being their number 9 next season. Well, it would be amazing if that was, to become a reality. But at the same time, I'm going to speak from a Liverpool point of view and from a business perspective as well. If they want to do business and they're serious, then they have to show us the money. We want about £80 million for Darwin Nunez. So if they want to sign a striker, like you guys did with us, in regards to Isak, you got to pay up. And if you're not willing to pay up, you know where the door is. So I don't personally think that Newcastle will splash the cash on one player. I think they want to be a bit more smart with their recruitment, utilize their money, and try and buy players to strengthen the squad. They'll need a few players, I think, added before the season starts. Another target that they've had in mind for the striker role is Johan Wissa. Now, I actually believe that this would be a good signing for Newcastle. It's not going to be an easy task for them as there's a number of clubs that are in the mix. So they've joined the race to sign the Brentford striker, but it's not going to be a conclusion done because it's Newcastle. A lot of teams, including Tottenham, I believe, are interested in signing the striker. Of course, Johan Wissa is not anywhere near the quality or the level of Ekitike, but I do think he would be a great replacement for Callum Wilson at Newcastle. He probably wouldn't cost too much. I think he'd cost maybe around 35 million pounds. So Newcastle would then have the finances to add a centre back and maybe another player within their squad. So if that deal, can't be done, because the market's not the best. Let's be honest. They may have to settle for Calvert-Lewin, who's available on a free transfer. But we have to ask the big question: what does this mean in regards to Isak? As I mentioned before, no bids were made from Liverpool. We made an official approach to see if there was any leeway or if there is any chance of business being conducted. We approached them. They seemed concerned because s- the news or the sort of revelations we're getting through media sources is that they were concerned that Liverpool were going to put down a crazy amount of money on the table that may have been hard to refuse. But maybe we got the indication that they're not willing to do business. I don't think they rejected the approach. I think they were just being a bit coy about it. And knowing that they've also approached Ekitike, who was our on paper second, player on the shortlist, we had to kind of say, you know what, all right, fine, you're not going to talk to us right now. We're going to move on and try and get our second target. It ends up being your primary target, which is of course Ekitike. So fair play to Liverpool. If we had waited around, hoping to get our number one target, we may have, missed out on Ekitike, and we would have been left in a position where we don't know which striker we're going to sign. Maybe we wouldn't even recruit a new striker because of the timing right now, where we've got a month away before the season starts. So, I think Liverpool have done the right thing to target Ekitike. Whether he was number one target or not, I don't really know because we don't work for the recruitment team, so we won't officially know. But I do know that Liverpool have been scouting for Ekitike for some time now. He's definitely been on the radar for a while. Um, and I think, Liverpool have done the classy thing to just walk away and try and sign another striker. And personally, if we get Ekitike, I do think it closes the door for Isak joining Liverpool this summer. But it could be a completely different conversation next summer. For all we know, I'm not, trying to put this energy out there so it happens. But for example, what if Isak has a average season, maybe due to his annoyance of not being able to join Liverpool, and because of that poor run of form, his valuation drops down. And look, it's not. I'm not trying to predict this. I'm not trying to put that energy out there, but it's a slight possibility. I made this example the other day with Kudus. Kudus was on great form for West Ham. His second season was very poor, and that's why he's actually gone to Spurs for £50 million. He was valued at 90 million not so about 18 months ago. So these things can happen. And the funny thing about this current situation is that you know Liverpool haven't completely said that, oh, we're no longer interested in Isak. I imagine if Liverpool still pursued Isak as the weeks commences in this current window, because we do need to sign two strikers. It's not just the one striker. We do need a second striker as well. Me personally, I don't think it will happen, but can you imagine, if it did? But we'll see what happens in regards to Isak. I think he will most likely stay at Newcastle now, unless another team, want to sign a new striker. Real Madrid may be interested in signing a new striker. With their current situation, I think Vinicius Junior has been linked to a move to Saudi. That would open the gap where Mbappe plays left wing, and then they have a vacant space for the main striker. And Isak would fit the bill there as well. So who knows? Let's see what happens in terms of the coming weeks, and we'll have a full-on conclusion, I guess, in terms of where Isak will be. And I think Ekitike will be a Liverpool player by end of the week. Liverpool doing a fast track runner. They're trying to get the deal done as soon as possible. They've already got a mental deadline in their minds, so they're trying to get this deal done as soon as possible. So don't be surprised if we hear news tomorrow that a fee's been agreed and he's coming over for medical, and then on Sunday he's concluded and then we present him on Monday. Don't be surprised if that occurs. So I'm excited about Ekitike signing. I think he's a great player. I saw some comparisons today online. I don't know if it was Liverpool fans or Newcastle fans, but it was along the lines that he's like a Nunez, which is lazy because you can't compare him to Nunez just because they may be the same height. In terms of playing style, they're actually nothing alike. Ekitike is better on the ball. He's got a better first touch. He's a better dribbler. He's great in terms of link up play. He's quick on the channels. He's got better awareness, in my opinion. So he knows when to move, and he knows when to make the run to avoid being offside. Um, Shooting, I think he's better than Nunez. I don't think Ekitike is the best. He's quite raw, but has shown glimpses that he could certainly hit the back of the net. He's a clinical finisher as well. He's not just the type of striker that smashes it all day long. He's the one that is a bit more calm, composed, measures his shots into the corner. So for me, he's an upgrade on Nunez. That's the concern from Liverpool fans. Is he going to improve us? He does, in my opinion. He is an upgrade on him, and he's a striker that he likes to drop deep as well, which can, help if you wanted to play that false nine kind of formation. We don't need to change personnel. It'll just be instructions for Ekitike. He can do that. That is his natural game as well. If we need him to play out wide, for example, and we've got another striker through the middle, he can play on the left if required. He used to play as a left winger when he came through the ranks of Reims in France. So he's definitely got that capability. So for me, it's a smart signing. It's a typical Liverpool sign if you look at it in terms of his profile, 23 years of age, had a great season for Frankfurt, on the cusp of, hitting that next level, in my opinion. So it's a typical, FSG signing. I think because we've had our eyes on Isak, maybe it doesn't have that same level of excitement for us. But I think once he comes and once he puts on the red shirt, I think us fans will definitely be pleasantly surprised. So really looking forward to the sign of Isak. Before I move on to the next room, I'm just going to go through some of the comments here. First comment here from Kieran. Big up Kieran, says, "Good evening. What a beautiful transfer market it has been so far. Exciting times ahead." It certainly has. I was thinking about this earlier on today, where this time last year when I was doing content about transfers, I think I did a transfer show like this, a Liverpool transfer talk show once a week, because there was a lot of rumors about Liverpool signing players, but there's no real activity. But this time round, it's been crazy. I've been doing shows every day. There's been so much developments in the last few days. It's been more exciting, having these shows, having a discussion with you guys on a daily basis about what's going to happen with Liverpool. So yeah, it's definitely been exciting, and it's going to be like that when the season starts as well. Very exciting times ahead, and it's a great time to be a Liverpool fan as well. Mazzy, big up Mazzy, says, Ozzy, how do you feel about us signing Hugo Ekitike? He's a baller, but do you think he can get around 30 goals a season? I think in terms of his opening season, I wouldn't want to put too much pressure on the striker to hit 30 goals. I don't know if he's quite at that level yet to be so prolific, but he has the tools. He is a good finisher. It's just that finding that consistency, and of course he's coming into a new league where it's going to be played at a different pace. He's going to have to get accustomed to that and then get accustomed to the way we play. So first few months, I think it will take him a bit of time to get accustomed to. But once he's, got himself used to the physicality and the tenacious way of how the Premier League is played, then I think, we'll see the best of him, towards the latter stage and, for seasons on as well. So for me, in terms of the strikers that are available in the market, I think he's one of the best options. If Isak was available, then that's the one to go to. But according to Newcastle, he's not available. So Osimhen, I don't know what his situation. Maybe he would have been the experienced, established signing for us. But I'm all for Ekitike. Some fans wanted Sesko. For me, that was a no go, and I've said that quite clearly over the last few weeks. So I'm pleased that it's Ekitike that's joining the club. I'm looking forward to him being a Liverpool player. Um, Adam, big up yourself. Adam says, is Isaac therefore off the deal? I can't officially say it's off because Liverpool haven't, communicated that to the press. It's just that we've moved on to our other target. You never know. Crazy things have happened, but maybe revisit this later on in the window if Isak shows a bit of a fuss or ends up sending us a transfer request, which I don't think would happen. But you just never know in this day and age. So I wouldn't say it completely is a dead deal. But if you ask for my honest opinion, I don't think we'll pursue the striker this summer. It might be something where we pursue him next summer, but I don't see it happening this summer, unfortunately. So for me, Ekitike is going to be the striker we get. It'll be interesting to see who we sign on top of that because I do believe we need a second striker. Internally, it could be where Chiesa ends up being the backup striker, which is a strong possibility, or we might go for a Mateta, that kind of profile, an experienced striker, which actually bodes very well because you have a young striker in Ekitike, but if he's not hitting the ground running, then you've got an experienced player like Mateta off the bench, and it's a good balance, I would say, in the squad. So that's something I think can be on the cards. So it remains to be seen, if Liverpool do pursue a second striker in this window. So your second comment was as in, can we not buy him in the future? We can. I just don't think it's going to happen in this summer. Mazzy said, "What happens with Isak? Is it completely over for now, or is there more to story?" I think it's not over, like completely dead, but I don't think we'll be, you know, speaking to Newcastle again in this window. Maybe it's resurfaced again next summer. But for now, for the short term, no, I don't think we will be going for Isak. Why silly my question? Uh, yeah, just let's keep it respectable, guys. Ozzy, can you do a comparison between Isak and Hugo Ekitike? What's the positive and negative regarding both players? In terms of stats, of course, Isak would have the better number. In terms of stylistically, the best way to describe, in my opinion, is that Ekitike is like a young Isak, if that makes sense. He's probably the Isak that Newcastle had bought from Real Sociedad. He's at that level. I think he's actually better than Isak when he was at Sociedad because when he was there, he was very inconsistent. His shooting wasn't the best. He wasn't the most prolific player there. And that is kind of a similar trait that we're seeing with Ekitike, where you can see all the tools there. You can see what type of player he is. But just that finishing, it needs to be worked on a little bit. But he's a young player, 23 years of age. He's not like Darwin Nunez where, he's 25, 26. Like he's had a few years to be that guy. This is a young player on the verge of playing for a big club like Liverpool. And he's going to be playing in the Premier League and playing in the Champions League as well. So it's going to be interesting. I'm very excited about the signing of Ekitike. And I feel like pound for pound, this signing would make more sense. And I'm not just saying that because we're not getting Isak now. Isak, if we end up paying 120, 130 million for him, there's no guarantee that he'll play a large amount of games because he does have, an injury record, unfortunately. And with Ekatike, we've got a player that I think has more sort of better all round ability. I think Isak is by far the better finisher, but I think Ekitike has a bit more to his game in terms of his link up play is really underrated. Great hold up play. His dribbling is very good as well. So for me, he's a very interesting profile. He dribbles like a winger. He used to play as a winger in his younger days. So he's got that skill, that one-on-one ability. He's producing nutmegs and also he's that type of player. So he's an exciting dribbler, a calculated player as well. He's very, you know, very methodical in terms of how he moves. He doesn't just dribble for the sake of it. He'll make the right run and then lay off the perfect pass whenever he can. So he's a very smart player. So for me, we've got a good player in our hand. I think he's the best one available. And in terms of how we play, he makes a perfect sense. I expect him to form a great partnership with Florian Wirtz as well. That's another exciting prospect as well. Um, Ozan come back. Said, "Big up the man, Ozzy. Big up yourself, Ozan. Come back. I hope you're doing well." Um, Ozan come back. Second comment. Ozzy, have you heard from Richard Hughes yet? It's time to have that talk with Hugo to boost his morale. I haven't had that phone call yet. The phone's right here, so I'm hoping for it to buzz at some point. So if he needs my help to, share some wisdom or a bit of a motivational speech to get him on board, I'm all here. So I'll try and help him fast track that move as soon as possible, so we get the player over the line before the weekend concludes, and then he'll be on the plane to Japan next week. So yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready whenever called upon now. Azrak says Isak is the better player now because he's Premier League proven, but Hugo Ekitike has much higher ceiling with better potential. I agree with that. I think because we're seeing Isak doing it for the last couple of years on a consistent basis, and he's become one of the most lethal strikers in Europe. Let's not beat around the bush. But Ekitike is a very special talent. He's got something about him, and I feel like playing under a coach like Arne Slot and for a team like Liverpool, he's just ready to be unlocked. So for me, it's very, very exciting prospect for us, going into next season. Kieran says Ekitike is nothing like Nunez, more like Isak. 100% agree. I just think it was a lazy comparison. I don't know if it's because Nunez had a great season for Benfica before he joined us, and then unfortunately, it didn't quite go to plan. Maybe they're thinking, oh, he's had a purple patch in terms of Ekitike, so if he comes to Liverpool, he's not going to have that same impact. I don't know what the comparison was. The only similarity is probably the height. They're probably similar height, and that's literally all it is. So playing style, they don't play anything like Nunez doesn't have the best first touch. He's a decent dribbler, but he's not the so there's different types of dribblers. So you'll get some players that when they dribble, the ball sticks to their feet. Like Ekitike is that type of dribbler. Nunez, because he's so quick, he's the type of player where he'll hit the ball forward and chase the ball, and that's where he stands out in terms of his dribbling, that he's going to get past people very, very easily. Ekitike can do that, but he's more of a calculated dribbler. He'll go around a couple of players, produce a nutmeg here and there, and even either go for goal or thread that through ball to one of the attackers, and then it goes on from there. So for me, yeah, nothing like, and I agree, he's more like Isak. That's the similarities that I've seen whenever I've seen him play. Then you said in terms of playing style, I completely agree with that. Um, Hamza 11 minutes. He says, "Oh, just okay, my knee. I'm on crutches. Bloody hell. Hope you're doing okay. Hope you have a speedy recovery. Dislocate my knee sounds awful. I think the worst injury I've ever had when I played football was I twisted my knee. So I ripped my sort of knee ligaments, and I was in bed for about 2, 3 weeks. But that's the worst as I got. Dislocated knee sounds painful. So I hope you're okay. I hope you're on the road to a speedy recovery, and I hope we can help you in terms of producing content and hopefully put a smile on your face. During this difficult time. So I hope you're doing well, Hamza. Um, Albert says if Liverpool have Salah versus Ekitike and Rodrygo up front, then the Premier League is very much guaranteed. We'll speak about Rodrygo very, very soon as well. Definitely on my agenda for today. But that's a mouthful in prospect there for sure. Kieran says nothing is ever guaranteed, my friend, except United not winning the league, of course. Yeah, that I can vouch for. So I completely agree with that. Um, Albert says Fletcher, you're absolutely spot on. The only guarantee is Manchester. Yeah, we can all agree on that, I guess. So yeah, that is unanimous in terms of United not winning the league. I was like, honestly, if you could only pick one of these two major trophies to win next season, what would it be? 21 or number 7? I have to say 21, Ozan. Honestly, I would love for us to get another Champions League trophy. But I feel like the Premier League, it means a bit more, and I'm referencing number 66 there, unfortunately, but it does mean a bit more for us to win that league title. Of course, I'll be greedy to say both. Like, I don't want to pick between the two, but if you're putting me on the spot, I'd go for the Premier League. And we've equaled United's record of 20 titles. I want it to be where we surpass them now. So we're in a great position right now where we have recruited very well, and I believe we are going to add more before the end of the window. So we're in a great position to make it 21. So for me, I'd go for the Premier League title. That's the one that I would love for us to do back to back as well. Not that it was a fluke last season. Your rival fans will talk rubbish, of course, but I don't want it to be where we win one trophy here and there. I want it to be where if we can dominate, with consecutive titles, it just strengthens our position even more. And having a coach like Arne Slot who won it in his first year, and then what if he wins it in the second year? It just puts him in a better light as well. So for me, back-to-back Premier League titles sounds really good. So I definitely go for that. You said ideally it would be both for me, of course, but you said once, so I've gone for the Premier League title. Kieran says winning the league is more important for me. Let's have the most league titles in England and defend the title for the first time in many years. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Kieran. And so does Ozan Kabak. So yeah, fair point there. Now on to the next rumor, and that is regarding Luis Diaz. Now Diaz wants to leave Liverpool, and it seems to be quite urgent about that as well. He's not said it out loud in that kind of manner, but it's little hints here and there. comes across that he's very frustrated and he wants to leave Liverpool this summer. Bayern Munich placed a bid earlier this week with a £58 million offer, and that was instantly rejected by Liverpool. Liverpool were like, "That's not good enough." You know, hop on and if you want to acquire his services, you have to come back with a better offer. Now it remains to be seen if Bayern will return with an improved offer, as it appears that Diaz has FaceTime Vincent Company and has said yes to his offer or proposal to join the German side. And that's all good and well. But for me, from a Liverpool point of view, all we care about is those pound signs. We want 80 million for Luis Diaz. So show us the money. If you're serious about signing the player, place that second offer and then Liverpool will talk business. If not, Al Nassr are waiting on the wings to place a bid of €100 million, which in pounds is £86 million. So my verdict, I think Luis Diaz unfortunately will leave. I would like him to stay. So it is a shame that he, doesn't want to continue his journey at the club. I think he would have been a very valuable member of our team next season. But in terms of interest from other clubs, Barcelona have shown interest in him in the past. I don't think they have the finances to come back with, a big bid or anything to that nature. And I don't think he'll end up at Bayern. I don't know where it is. I don't see Bayern, increasing the bid to 70, 80 million pounds. It doesn't seem like the way they do business. So I don't think that will happen. I see him leaving for Saudi. I think he'll join Al Nassr, especially, if his sole reason for leaving Liverpool is for financial reasons. He's not going to get retirement money anywhere else but Saudi, because they're the ones that will pay top dollar for you. So let's see how this news unfolds. Will we get a smooth conclusion? I don't think it'll be done in the next week or so, but I think we will get you know, some further developments, especially if Saudi in the mix. If Saudi definitely want to sign Diaz, and when I say Saudi, I'm referencing Al Nassr, then they'll try and get that done as soon as possible as well. So it could be fast tracked. We're in Asia next week, so if he needs to take a small flight to Saudi Arabia, it's only a few hours difference, so he can do that if required. So let's see what happens. If Al Nassr definitely want a player and they place that bid where they're not here to haggle, they're like 86 million. Here you go. We want the player, please, and then we just take it from there. So let's see what happens with Diaz. But unfortunately, I do expect him to leave this window. Before we move on to the next rumor, just going to read out Mazzy's comment. Mazzy says, Aussie, Arsenal, Manchester United, Chelsea, and Newcastle all wanted Ekitike, but the boy only wanted us. It shows Liverpool are the biggest club in the country. It does. We're the one that has the appealing project right now, if you want to reference it in that way. But in terms of what we stand for, what we are as a club, and what we've achieved over the years, and our history and heritage, we are a big team. We are a big establishment. The teams that you mentioned there, Arsenal, they're trying to compete, but they just always fall short. They haven't won a major trophy in a number of years now, so they're not really there in a position to you know throw their weight around by saying, "Oh, we've won this and that." They haven't won much, so they can't really talk in highlight. Manchester United, they've been in decline for a number of years. Since Sir Alex Ferguson left, that club has been getting worse and worse. They're sacking dinner ladies. They're you know doing barbecues instead of parades. They're doing all sorts right now. So yeah, they're trying to be cost efficient. That's why it's taking them weeks to even place a bid for Embuemo. So they're a mess on and off the field. Of course, in terms of the name Manchester United, the brand, and from a business point of view, they still have that appeal. Players will still want to join Manchester United, and from their point of view, they will stupidly pay whatever the transfer fee is, and they'll stupidly pay whatever the player wants in terms of wages. So because of that, that's affected, their business over the years. And that's why, they've made some really poor signings over the years. And that's what's costing them. That's why they're not progressing. They feel like they take one step forward and end up taking about 10 steps back because of the type of signings that they're making. So they've got a lot of work to do. They're not anywhere near challenging for the title. they just about made it, from avoiding relegation. So, their aim is to stay in the top half. Mid-table finish, that is an improvement from last season. So that should be their aim and ambition going forward. Chelsea just like to spend money, honestly. Unlimited funds in their bank account, no real strategy in terms of what they're doing, but they are improving. I will say that, the signing of João Pedro, I can't lie, looks a very, very good signing. So they'll definitely be up there, in my opinion. They'll definitely challenge for the top four. I don't think they're quite ready for the title, but we'll reevaluate Chelsea when the window closes because I always like to do my prediction show when the window closes and give you my take into how I think teams have improved and where I see certain teams finishing the league. So it'll be very interesting to see what other business they conduct because rest be assured they are going to buy players in some shape or form very very soon. So we'll see how it goes for Chelsea. And in terms of Newcastle, they have a very solid foundation. I feel like they just need a few players to add to what they currently have, and they can be a team that challenges for top four and maybe even push for a title challenge at some point. Had they sold Isak to us, they would have had more funds to attract more players to the squad. So it'll be interesting to see, who they end up signing before the window closes. Kieran says, I like Diaz and the intensity he brings to the front line is amazing. But if an offer comes in worth 80 million, I'm accepting it. I still think he's underrated by opposition fans because of numbers. I totally agree with you, Kieran. If we get anything near 80 million pounds, I'm accepting it as well. You can tell the player is not happy. He's frustrated by not being given a new contract or improved terms on his current contract. Therefore, there's no point of holding on to a player that's, you know, annoyed and frustrated with the club because that can unfortunately reflect onto the squad. If he starts throwing a strop or a tantrum during the season, it affects the morale of the team. So for me, there's no point of having a rotten egg in the squad. Might as well move him on. And I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say that, but we have to look out for our team. And if someone isn't there for the cause and is just thinking financially, then I don't want that player to stay at the club. So if he wants to move on, if he's all about his money, then he has to head to Saudi. Saudi's where he's going to get that big paycheck. Bayern aren't going to. He'll get a good salary at Bayern, but from what the way the sort of angle he's coming from, you're better off going to Saudi. You're going to earn much more money there in comparison to Liverpool or Bayern. So if it's all about the money, then you need to head towards that direction. So let's see what happens with Diaz. But I agree. I do like him as well. But if we're receiving that kind of offer, we'll be silly not to accept it. So I definitely agree with that. Roger Painting, big up yourself. He says Diaz loves Liverpool, but he's 29 soon and he wants a new contract with more money. So Ozzy, do you give him more money or cash in and get Rodrygo? We'll speak about Rodrygo now. It's an interesting one. I think it's a great question because I think in terms of what Diaz offers now, you have stability. You know what he brings to the table. And even though I don't rate Rodrigo as highly as some fans do, some fans put him in that world class category. He's not nowhere near that category, in my opinion. I think he's very good. He's not at the elite or the world class level. Those are the kind of levels that I put certain players in. But he's very young. How old would you? Is he 24? He's around that kind of range, isn't he? Um, So a player, in my opinion, that is very young, he's 24. So the ceiling is very high for him. And I feel like if he was to come to Liverpool, he'd be playing in a position where he will excel in. So his position is left wing. That's the position he wants to play. And I watched some compilations, just to refresh, my thinking of the player. It definitely has talent. He's a very talented player. But I still stand with my sort of assessment of him. I don't think he's elite. I think he's a very good player, but that's not saying he'll remain as a very good player forever. If he moves to the right club, he can elevate his game. I think he can achieve that elite level and could even become world class. He does have that potential, but he won't be able to achieve that Real Madrid because They don't rate him there. They don't favor him that much. They don't start him in many games. So a move away from the Spanish Giants makes the most sense for him at this stage of his career. And Liverpool should be showing the most interest right now. So for me, it's a great question. Even though I don't rate him very highly, I'd probably cash in and get Rodrygo because I feel like there's a player that has a higher ceiling. Diaz right now doesn't seem to be fully focused. He wants better terms. So when the players, got an issue that's a bit off field, I don't want that affecting the morale. I want us to be very strong as a unit, and we need to go again to challenge for all the titles this season. So for me, that is very, very key. So in regards to your question, maybe surprisingly, I'd cash in and I'd get Rodrigo. That would be my replacement for Diaz. And Kieran says we could use that money to sign Rodrigo, and I'm sure we will get onto. Yeah. So the thing about the whole Rodrigo thing, and Newcastle fans will, probably, be like, oh, you're just being a bit sour because you haven't got Isak. But us getting sick, Isak might be a good thing financially because Ekitike, I don't expect us to pay more than 80 million. I think they want around 77. That's what the ball mark that they're after. I think we'll probably end up signing for about 75 million. So with that money, plus Rodrigo, and I think Rodrigo's his price range is quoted around 70 million pounds. So if we were to sign him, that's just over 145 million pounds. That's probably close enough to what we were going to pay for Isak alone. So I'd rather get Ekitike and Rodrigo than just Isak because I do feel like we need another player to replace Luis Diaz. Because let's say in that situation we only get Isak and Diaz does leave as well. What would happen is that we end up, moving Chiesa as your left wing option. You guys know I rate Chiesa, and that is his prime position as well. But we can't rely on Chiesa to be the main man, or we can't rely on him to be covered for that position because of his injury record. And we don't know how he's going to, you know, evolve next season. I think he'll definitely be much better than what he produced in his first season because I think he's accustomed to the league and I think he's gotten used to the way we play. So that's why I feel like a left wing role would suit Chiesa more. Even playing up top will suit him because I feel like he's got that awareness to make the right move, and he's got a good shooting range as well. So for me, it would make more sense to have Rodrigo and Isak. Sorry, Rodrigo and Ekitike rather than just signing Isak, in my opinion. So you know, you always have to look at the positive. Our prime target was Isak, and there's no way to be around that. That was our prime target. But if we didn't get him, we've moved on. We've tried to be a bit more smart. We were like, what's the next best thing? Ekitike. Because he's very similar to Isak. He's just probably a few years behind because he's very young and he's finding his range. He's developing into that player. But then also we've got a player that's not happy right now in Luis Diaz. So we need to find a left winger that'll come in to replace it. And I think Rodrigo is probably the best one out there in terms of availability, just like Ekitike was. So for me, Rodrigo and Ekitike in the mix, alongside Verts, Salah, Gakpo, Szoboszlai, and then hopefully another striker as well. We're cooking. So yeah, I would be happy, if we did get Rodrigo as the replacement. Kieran says, is there a chance we will keep Chiesa? I have a feeling that we will keep him. I think he'll be utilized more as a striker. So it's interesting to see what happens because I think if we were going for Isak, we may have just signed the one striker. But because we've got Ekitike, we might have sort of funds available to sign a backup as well. It's very hard to sign a backup striker when you've already signed another striker. Um, but if they're finding it tricky to recruit for that type of player, then having Ekitike and then Chiesa as your backup strikers is not the worst case scenario. And having Gakpo and then hopefully player like Rodrigo, come in to replace Diaz as well, it makes the perfect sense. And Chiesa can play across the front line. He can play on the left wing, right wing, up top. So it would be a good option. I hope we do get a second striker. I think we do need one. It will just give us that further strength and depth that we need to compete in all cylinders. So I think he'll stay. Um, Other players at Harvey Elliott, I'm not too sure. I'll speak about Harvey Elliott during the show as well. So we'll see what happens with Chiesa and Harvey Elliott. Azrak with the comment saying, just wondering, Ozzy, why doesn't Rodrigo completely convince you? He's a 32 cap Brazilian international who's played at a high level for more than 5 years. So he'll definitely be value of money. I think it's maybe because the ways people speak about him, like saying that he's world class, and I think that word gets thrown out, or the words get thrown out quite freely nowadays. Where if someone has a half decent season, oh, he's a legend, or he's this. So for me, when someone says world class, I'm thinking you're one of the best right now in world football. So when you say Haaland is world class, for me, he's one of the best strikers in world football. I know he plays for a rival, but we've got to speak facts there. So for me, Rodrigo's not quite there in my mind, but I've said it quite a few times. I think he's a very good player. Maybe, the downfall has been that he's at Real Madrid where, he's got Vinicius Junior ahead of him. So he's not allowed to play in his favorite role. And he's had to be a makeshift player where he plays at the right sometimes. Sometimes he plays on the left, sometimes he plays through the middle. So he's become more of a squad player or I don't want to say utility player, but he's become a player that because of his versatility, he's been used in different roles. So maybe that's been the reason why I've not seen enough of him to say that he is world class. But I do feel like, and I'm not just being biased because I'm a Liverpool fan, but if he does come to Liverpool, I think we have the foundations to allow him to become that guy. If he comes in and puts in the hard work and shows that he is world class. Like if he believes it and he shows it in a Liverpool shirt, that left wing position can be his. Gakpo was fantastic last season, don't get me wrong, but we need quality in our squad. We can't just rely on one person. And Gakpo is versatile, but he can play up top if needed. He can play in the number 10. So we can always play these players in different positions. Rodrigo can cover for right wing. Now he won't be asked to play there for a large duration, but whenever Salah's not available or needs a rest, or when he's at AFCON, Rodrigo is the player that can come in as well. So that's why Rodrigo for me makes the most sense. And funny enough, it might have come across that I don't rate him very highly. I did a show a few weeks ago where I played the role of sporting director. Like I was, the gangster that is Richard Hughes, and I tried to forecast, you know, who Liverpool should sell, who Liverpool should buy. In the show, I actually said we should get Rodrigo because he's available, and I think what he brings to the table into the versatility, can play on the left, can play on the right. For me, that makes the most sense to have that kind of attacker in our team. My favorite player is Barcola for that left wing position, but he's not available. So if someone's not available, like Isak, what do? You move on and try and find another target. And for me, Rodrigo fits that bill. So yeah, when he joins, if he's amazing, I'll say it. But then I'm very honest as well. So for me, if I don't rate someone and they prove me wrong, I'll be first one to put my hand up and say, yeah, I was wrong. But I do rate him. I will be excited if he becomes a Liverpool player. But only time will tell, if that is the case. The current rumor in regards to Rodrigo is that from ESPN, ESPN Brazil, that Liverpool have begun preliminary talks with Real Madrid to sign Rodrigo. So if that's the case, it's positive news. I don't think we have. We may have, I guess they are right to an extent. Maybe we've contacted Real Madrid, but I don't think we've begun any talks. Maybe we've approached him to see if he's available. I think we would want, Diaz to be sold before we make any other move. Or I could be wrong because let's say we don't get a suitor for Luis Diaz and we sign Rodrigo as well. Diaz can be utilized as a striker. He'll probably just be a backup striker to Ekitike, and then you've got Rodrigo and Gakpo challenging each other for the left wing position. So maybe, we don't wait for the sale of Diaz. Maybe we go in now and try and get Rodrigo, especially if he's available. And there might be other teams interested. And funny enough, the other team that I saw today was Bayern Munich that are trying to sign Rodrigo. So if they can't get Diaz, then they're going to go for Rodrigo. So this might be a Newcastle part two or 2.0 moment where, you know, we've gone for their primary target because we couldn't get another target, if that makes sense. So let's see what happens. But I would be very happy and very pleased if we were to sign Rodrigo. So yeah, I'll be bringing out the shisha on the show. That's for sure. Um, Ozan Kabak says, I see a breakout season for Rio, not gonna lie. I won't be surprised because his trajectory right now, he's just I think his development is probably at a faster rate than what the club were expecting as well. Because I thought, he'll just get accustomed to playing reserve football and taking his time there. But he made his debut in the last month before the season concluded. I believe he scored 2, 3 goals. I think he scored a hat trick or something. I think it was Villa that was the under 23 team as well. So he already made an instant impact when he played at that level. 16 years old, playing for under 23s and smashing goals in your opening appearance. Like, that's unheard of. So for me, you know, I think for him, the important thing is to keep his head down, listen to the coaches, work hard in training, improve on your game. Because I still feel like his end product needs to be better. I know he's 16, so I'm maybe sounding a little bit harsh, but if he's going to be a part of the first team, that's an area he needs to improve on. And I can see him, being part of the team a bit more into second half of the season. Whether that's cup games or not, it remains to be seen. But I do feel like he will be involved in the first team in some shape or form. And I think personally, next season will be the breakout season where he is listed as one of the first team players, not one of those players that is, just in your 25s. He'll be behind a Gakpo, Rodrygo. Like he'll be amongst the core of our attackers. So let's see. I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but we can see that the talent is there. His ceiling's so high. We're very, very lucky to have him. So yeah, very excited to see what the future holds for young Rio there. And Ozan Kabak says, I won't mind if Hughes focuses on a centre back now, Ozzy, instead of a forward slash winger. I hear you. I think with the Diaz situation, if he goes, then you know we might have to be quick to try and move for Rodrigo because I think he will have interest from other clubs. But in the centre back position, for all we know, maybe that's something that's a done deal in the background because there were very strong reports, unfortunately, before the passing of Jota that that is close to being agreed. So it might just be done. Also, in regards to Crystal Palace, they were waiting on their sort of outcome with regards to participating in the Europa League, and that verdict is concluded now. They will not be participating in the Europa League, and they will be playing the Conference League next season. So because of that, maybe we can haggle a little bit better. We can, you know, put down a slightly lower bid than we were originally planning to doing because of that outcome. Um, so I think Gay is the centre back that we're going to go for. I don't see us going for another profile. That is the player I feel like we are destined to sign. And it would appear that the player, sorry, is fully on board. Apparently, they've already agreed terms with the player in terms of Liverpool and Gay. So let's see. But I do believe that we will sign a centre back. I might be be a bit more greedy. I want a centre mid as well, just to complete the puzzle, in that shape or form. So let's see. But I agree. I think if Diaz leaves very soon, then it's worth us finding that replacement straight away. And I think Rodrigo would be top of that list. Otherwise, centre back should be a sole focus as well. Kieran agrees, says, yeah, new centre back is vital. And Mazzy says, Ozzy, do you think Ekitike will do better than Nunez? Because I'm absolutely sure he'll score more goals than Nunez. He's got more natural ability. I think he will, Mazzy. I think Ekitike has a better all-round game. He's a better player in terms of link-up play, dribbling, his tactical awareness, making sure he's keeping onside. Because Nunez would be onside numerous times every game, which would be really frustrating to watch as well. But he's a better finisher. He's more calm, more composed in front of goal. I don't think he's the most prolific. I think there's still areas of his game where he can improve his finishing, but he's got a better range than Nunez. Nunez's technique is that you grab the ball and try and smack it, as hard as you can. Ekitike is a bit more calculated. He'll try and pass it with real power into the bottom corner. That's his type of finishing. So for me, I feel like we've got a better player. I think he's on a high level. I'm sorry, than Nunez. So for me, it's a very, very exciting prospect. On to the next comment in terms of Rodrigo. So Kieran says, I agree with you mostly on Rodrigo, but I rate him slightly higher. It's the same with how a lot of people say Nico Williams is the lead, but I disagree with that. Great Euros, but inconsistent. I agree with your last comment as well because Nico Williams at the Euros was fantastic, wasn't he? But then I watched him for Bilbao. I watched him in the Europa League a couple of times. He was nowhere near it. So I think in Spain his value still remained quite high because of what he did in the national team. So people expected him to move over to Barcelona. But no, I agree. To be fair, his deal was a bit crazy because he had a very low release clause, but he was on like 300K. Like he was earning crazy salary. God knows what he's earning now because he's got a new contract. And I think he's got a is it like a 7-year contract? Like he's got a very long-term contract, which is quite unheard of. Might even be 10 years. I might be incorrect there, but yeah, I saw the video announcement. I feel like it said 2035. So if it's a 10-year contract, wow, he's pretty much committed his whole career to the club. And so for me, I agree. With Rodrigo, I would probably say because he's done it for a longer duration, he should probably have more credit in the bank to be regarded a better player. I think in between the two, I'd probably actually go for Rodrigo. Funny enough, it appears that I don't rate Rodrigo. I just don't rate him as highly as others, if that makes sense. But I do rate him. And if he's in a Liverpool shirt, he'll definitely get my full support. Ozan Kabak said that's a scummy move from Forest to rat out Palace. Not gonna lie, was the only to take their place. Yeah, I'm not even sure how it happened, but if that is the case, that Forest, snitched or appealed to Europa League. Yeah, that is scummy behavior. I'm not gonna lie, it's so not deserved because how were Palace supposed to know that they were going to win the FA Cup and qualify for the Europa League? With these sort of ownerships as well, there should be some kind of leeway in these kind of situations where you've got a deadline where if the main stakeholder has a conflict of interest where he's on two clubs in the same competition, then give them a deadline to sort that around where he sells a share or has a less sort of sharehold in terms of the club. And I think they actually did that. He sold part of his share to another American businessman, but for them I don't think it was good enough. And yeah, it is. It sucks. It's unfortunate for Palace, um, because they won the cup. They deserve to be rewarded. They deserve to play in the Europa League. Some fans will say, "Well, look, they got European football. They're in the Conference League, but that's not what they deserve. That's not what they earned. They earned the right to play in the Europa League." So, I agree. And for taking their place, it doesn't help. Let's be honest. Kieran says Williams is still young though and has big potential, just not ready to be the main star for an elite team yet, in my opinion. I agree. With some players as well, and I'm not being disrespectful, when they play for a lesser team, they stand out a bit more. I think in the Euros when he played for Spain, I think he was just in such good rich vein of form. It continued to, fall on into the national team. But since then, even when he's played for Spain, he's not looked as great. So yeah, he still has a lot of work to do. Consistency, is the key for him to be regarded as one of the best wingers, to be spoken about in the same light as Yamal. Because for me, Yamal has gone from strength to strength. He's just been unveiled as the new number 10 at Barcelona, so that's a proud moment for him and his family. So yeah, so Nico Williams got a lot more work to do to be regarded as one of the best wingers in world football. Also, come up the comment says, when all this time, a certain club with 115 active charges, nothing is happening to them. You're right, Ozan, because I said this about Leon not so long ago as well, where they were relegated to League Two, and I said to them, I think I said it on the show. I might have said it to someone. I can't remember now, but I did say that they're going to be back in Liga. There's no way that Lyon would get relegated to Ligue 2. If you say the right French pronunciation there, um, because it will kill the credibility of French football, not just the French league, French football altogether. And with World Cup coming up soon, that would be disastrous. So you know, w- because it was more of a sort of a financial situation that they were given that punishment initially. Um, I always knew that if they appealed, they will obviously be overturned because if it was something where they couldn't get back to, like they cheated or they did match fixing or something crazy like that, like it had happened over the years with Juventus and Milan, then you can't sweep that under the rug. That's it's quite clear that there's some fraudulent behavior going on. So from Leon, I knew they were going to be reinstated to Ligue 1, and it's the same with Man City. There's no way that they're going to get relegated and they're going to suffer all of the 115 charges. I think it's even 116 now. It's not going to happen because it will kill the credibility of the Premier League. And look, Premier League is the most watched league in the world. We earn the most money in terms of TV rights and partnership deals and revenue and all that sort of stuff. So if the team that's been champions for a large part of the last 10, 15 years is penalized for cheating, you lose all credibility for this league. So, we may still watch it because we're from here and we've grown up watching the league. But international fans will be like, nah, this is a dodgy league. They've got teams, being dodgy, like doing all kinds of crazy business. Like, we're not in for that. So they won't have that loyalty towards the league. And the Premier League will lose its sort of appeal or lose that attraction for uh, international fans to view the league, and also current players as well. They might leave. It might, downgrade the league if good profile players end up leaving the league. So it won't happen. The worst punishment would be a transfer ban, a financial fine, something along those lines, or both in a combined form. And it wouldn't be where they get charged for all 15, 115. It would be some charges and then they'll just put the rest under the rug, unfortunately. So it's not going to happen. But that's the football world. It's the business world as well. It's just, it's corrupt when, it shouldn't be. It's not for the person that plays the fair game, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Kieran said it's a 10-year contract. I thought it was 10-year contract as well. You're right, Kieran, because I remember watching the video and he was doing the graffiti, and I couldn't see if it was if it was 2000. And the number wasn't clearly, presented. But you're right. I thought it was 2035, which is wild. I thought Chelsea were the only team that gave out big contracts like that. Bill Barr just notched it up a level. 10-year contract. Wow. So they sold there, I guess. But yeah, good for him. Uh, Raji Painting says, if we sign Mark Gay, will he start straight away or interchange with Konate from game to game? This would be interesting. Ability wise, no. I think Konate will definitely be the main defender alongside Van Dijk. But if we hear that there's no new contract extension accepted by Konate, and there's still uncertainty with his future, or maybe he communicates it to the club privately that he wants to leave. It might change the way they think. It might change their thought in terms of team selection, and it might be where Mark Gay ends up being Van Dijk's partner and Konate drops to the bench. I doubt it because I think Arne Slot wouldn't be petty in that regards. Even if he knew Konate wasn't signing a new contract, if he's still part of the squad, he'll still, you know, be selected based on merit. If he works hard and deserves to be in the team, he'll be in the team. But I think Mark Gay is a fantastic addition to our squad, being a third choice centre back where he covers Van Dijk or Konate. For me, he's the perfect quality to have in the squad, and he will get game time. A lot of fans are like, "Oh, it's World Cup, yeah, he's not even going to play many games." He's going to get a lot of games. We're a Liverpool Football Club. We don't play just the 38 games in the season in terms of the league. We play different cup competitions. So our fixtures ends up being around 50, 60 games, depending on how far we progress. So for me, he would be a fantastic signing. Good age as well, 24, homegrown. So we've got another tick box activity there in terms of the homegrown quota. Um, Leadership quality, both footed, which I really like. He can play on the left side and even hit with his left foot, but he can also play right side very comfortably. Can play in the back three, can play in the back four. So adaptable to different systems and formations. So for me, yeah, he's the right signing. And I think he's he's the perfect player to interchange with Konate. Because Konate, of course, has had his injury issues in the past, so maybe we'll be a bit more smart if Konate plays next season and use him a bit more of a rotational way where Konate will play the bigger games and we'll play Gay against different oppositions or against some of the lower Premier League teams, if that makes sense. So for me, he's the perfect player to have in the squad. So hopefully Liverpool can get that over the line and sign Mark Gay in the next few weeks. Kieran says, yeah, of course, Rodrygo is a better player than Williams. At least we agree on that. Manny says, Ozzy, do you think 75 million for Ekitike is okay after having one good season in the German league, or are we paying for his potential and ability? It's a bit of both. I think we have assessed the player through data metrics and scouting reports that he has the potential to be one of the best strikers in Europe. Like he's got that kind of ability. So we are paying maybe a premium price um, for Ekitike because of his potential. Uh, in terms of his true valuation, he's probably worth like 50 million. But because of what he brings to the table, we probably have to add a bit more of a premium rate to get him over the line. So I think 75 million is not that crazy. It does seem quite high. But if you look at the market, Eucharist is going for around 60 odd million, right? We signed Nunez for around that kind of range as well, and that didn't work out. So for me, I think for a good striker, that is the going rate. You know, Chelsea were very lucky to get João Pedro for 50. That's maybe, they got a loyalty card with Brighton because they've done so much business over the years that, they got mate rates to get that player on board. But otherwise, if you look at all the other deals, teams would have to pay big to sign a quality striker. So for me, 75 million pounds is expected. I wouldn't say is the right valuation, but it's expected based on the market and what the rate is for attackers nowadays. So yeah, it does make sense. But I think because of his potential, we probably had to pay a bit more of a premium price. And plus, Frankfurt are in a position where they don't really have to sell because they've qualified for the Champions League, which I believe is the first time they've done that. So they can offer him Champions League football. He doesn't have to move anywhere. They've got that, on the board. So if you want to sign equity, you have to pay a bit more of a premium price, which is what we're doing. But it's not a crazy price where we might regret in the future. I think it's probably the market rate now, where if you want a top striker, you pay 60, 70, 80 million. That's the range now. That price is probably what it would cost to get a player 10, 15 years ago. And that would probably cost you like 40, 50 million pounds. That's how I would look at it. So for me, I'm very excited about the signing. I think in terms of the fee, it's not a wild amount. I do feel like, if we could get it less, it would be better. But I'm not accountant. I don't really care, how much money he gets bought for. It's not my money in the end of the day. As long as we get the right player, that's the key. So I think from a business point of view, I think it's a good deal. It is probably what we needed to pay to get a player of his quality and his potential. So Liverpool doing the right thing right now. Azrak with his comment says, Aussie, we've made some great signs, but do you trust Gumberg to carry on playing at number 6 non-stop? Or should we get a certified defensive midfielder to put the icing on the cake? For me, it's the latter. I think we should get another defensive midfielder to put the icing on the cake. For me, that signing completes the squad. If we get Ekitike and we get another left winger like a Rodrygo, we get Mark Gahey and we get a centre midfielder or defensive midfielder, we've got the complete squad, in my opinion. So that is what I would like. In terms of the first part of your question about Grunberg, I do trust him, but he'll need to be rotated quite a bit during the season. We don't want him to get fatigued or jaded as the season goes on because I feel like that impacted his form in the last 2, 3 months of the season. And those are the crucial, part of the season, especially, in the Champions League where if he was a bit more fresher, then may have helped us, progress further in the competition. I feel like with Endo's performances in the second half of last season, Arne Slot has a bit more trust in Endo, so he'll probably rotate with him a bit more. But I think if Arne Slot could, he'd probably want to sign another midfielder, uh, just above Endo in the picking order, to solidify the midfield a bit more and rotate between the new midfielder, Gravenberch and McAllister a bit more. So that would be the kind of profile that Arsenal would want, but maybe it's too much to do in one window. But you never know. Because we're looking at the striker market and the centre back market, the focus hasn't been on the midfield market. Maybe it does become the focus once we secure those signatures. So who knows? We still have plenty of time with the window, about 6 weeks left. So you'll never know. But I would like us to sign another midfielder if there's a possibility. Um, Roger Painting says, I agree with you. He's worth the money. Give Ekitike some time to show what he can do. And he's at the best club to do that. The fans shouldn't be on his neck. That's not how Liverpool fans are. We always give our players and new signings time to settle in and showcase their ability. And it's going to be the same for Ekitike. So he's going to be at a good place and he'll be given the freedom to express himself on the pitch and cause havoc to the oppositions. So looking forward to seeing how he evolves in a Liverpool shirt. Kieran says there's still time in the window, but I don't think we'll be able to sign two strikers, Diaz replacement, DM, and two centre backs. I don't think we'll sign two centre backs. I think it'll be one centre back. DM, it might be where it's if something arises where it's an opportunistic signing, someone becomes available all of a sudden, and we can do a sort of speedy deal, then maybe. But I think they've probably earmarked that position for next summer. I think that's the player or whoever, like an Adam Wharton, for example, that's someone that they'd probably go for next year, which makes sense because he's quite young. And I think him playing for Paris for another season and playing at a European league as well. I know it's not Europa, but it's still Conference League. That will bode well where he gains that valuable experience playing, European football against European opposition. And I think he'll be in a better position to come over to Liverpool next summer. So that would be the player that I think we should go for. I think he meets the profile that we need. A player that can play alongside McAllister or Gravenberch, and has a great passing range, but also being a very good defensive midfielder as well. So for me, he's the perfect profile. Um, if he was made available, then I think that's when we go in. But I think he's going to be the signing that we go for next year rather than right now. Um, so I think we'll sign. Honestly, I think we'll sign one striker, Diaz's replacement, and a centre back. I think we'll sign three more players. I don't think we'll sign a second striker. I don't know. Ideally, you would want it to be a second striker. Maybe I'm thinking Chiesa becomes that second striker in the terms of the short term. And then you've got a player like a Rodrygo, whoever comes in to replace Diaz. You've got Gakpo, you've got Verts, you've got Szoboszlai, and you've got Salah there as well. I think Elliot will probably move on in the end. So that's enough quality to sort of utilize and rotate throughout the season. And then you've got Ekitike up top with Chiesa, and Chiesa can also be backup for right wing as well. So I can see that being the scenario where Chiesa stays and becomes the second choice striker. Um, Maybe in the January window, if things don't work to plan, we get another attacker. But that's me, thinking a bit too far ahead there. But I think it will be three more players. That's my verdict. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Um, Chris says which would be ideal. That would be the ideal scenario in terms of the positions you mentioned. But I think that's too much to do um, with the time remaining right now. I think it'll be a lot for Liverpool to try and conclude. So I think the main focus will be centre back, striker, and replacement for Diaz. So our left wingers, that will be the three to do. Um, Other comment says, last question, Ozzy. Well, feel free to fire your question away, Ozan, whenever you're ready. There it is. um, Based on who we have right now today, name your starting 11. Okay, so no Rodrigo, nothing like that. Can I add Ekitike in the mix, or am I going a bit too far ahead? So let me know in the chat as I go through the team. So in goal, it's Allison, 100%. Left back, Kirkes, Van Dijk, Konate, and I'm going for Frimpong on the right back position. Even though I think Bradley and Frimpong will rotate quite heavily this season, but I'm going for Frimpong. And then my double pivot, I'm going for Gravenberch. I'm going for McAllister, and then in your sort of advanced three players, I'm going for Gakpo on the left, Vats and your number 10 role, and Salah on the right. And then if I'm not allowed to put Ekitike up top, then it has to be Nunez by default. Actually, you know what? I'll put Chiesa by default. So Chiesa will be the current striker right now. So that would be my team, based on the current situation. But if you ask me this question a few days later, then Ekitike will be leading the line. Um, Others says, yes, you can. Yes, we can add Hugo. We've already had that talk with him. All right, fine. We've had that talk. So yeah, so Ekitike will be leading the line. So that will be my starting 11 for Liverpool on the first day of the season. That's how I'll put it that way. So I think it's a strong team, very attack minded, but probably shows you my philosophy in terms of how I see the team going forward. I see this team evolving, honestly, with Perkins and Frimpong, and they're not going to both be fullbacks that bomb down at the same time. Perkins is going to be underlapping. That's his strength. That's what he's done for Bournemouth. He's done that at previous club in terms of Aiden Alkmaar as well. I've seen interviews where someone asked him, what's your strengths? What's your best, ability as a fullback? He says, I like to come inside. I like to be different. I like to come inside and try and have an impact on the game, whether it's from, you know, shooting or laying off the free ball, being inverted. That's his sort of natural game. So for me, he can overlap, and he's very good on the overlap. He's not like he's terrible. He can do a great job there as well. But for him to have that ability to be as a sort of an inverted fullback or underlapping and still be effective, we've got a multifunctional fullback there. And the same Frimpong, where playing right back, right midfield, right wing, he plays the same way. So that's his focus, attack minded, charging down the right flank, and he makes good diagonal runs as well. So that's why he scores a lot of goals for his previous club, which was Bayer Leverkusen. He scored a lot of goals from the near post because he gets himself in good positions. He's not going to be like Trent. So if fans aren't familiar with Frimpong and they're thinking we've got that type of player, he's not that type of player at all. He's an attack-minded fullback that is going to charge down the flank, going to make a lot of overlapping runs, whipping in crosses, and they'll probably get a few goals on the same page as well. So I'm excited about this prospect. The fullbacks, it's like having a young Robbo, not Trent in terms of playing style, but having two real fullbacks in our team. That's really different to what's out there as well. The only team that only has the same kind of level is PSG when you've got Nuno Mendes and you've got Hakimi. Like they're the fullbacks that you look at and thinking, they've got a great balance. I think with Kirkers and Frimpong, they have the potential of being on that same level as well. So very, very exciting prospect for Liverpool next season. I'm very much looking forward to it. We saw a glimpse against Preston, but of course, when we play better oppositions, it's going to be a very exciting prospect for us. Um, Kieran with the comment says, "Is there a chance we use Verts as our Diaz replacement and save that money to spend on other positions?" It's not a crazy shout, if I'm being honest with you, because I've said it in the past as well. I don't see Verts playing number 10 every single game. I see Verts occasionally playing on the left and, but predominantly playing number 10. The reason I say it because the way he plays, the way I've seen him play for Leverkusen and for Germany as well at times, he likes to drift on that left-hand side and then cut in. So that's why I've always likened him to Coutinho. Being a Liverpool fan, that is the best sort of example or comparison I can give. So that's what we can probably expect from a stylistic point of view. He's going to be that type of player. And because he's got that versatility and variation in his game, he can be a left wing option for us. But I don't see him being an out and out left winger because then I feel like you lose some of his quality where, if he's out wide all the time, we don't have that creative spark in the middle of that final third. And that's what we lacked last season. So for me, he will play there at times, but I think in terms of you saying saving money, um, the ticket deal will cost us about 70-75 million. So I think we've got that money there. Or if let's say we don't have any money, the Diaz deal could possibly pay off for the Ekitike deal, and then maybe we don't sign a Rodrygo replacement, or Nunez will leave, and then that Nunez money will be used to be utilized for the Rodrygo deal. Because I'm expecting Diaz and Nunez to go. So with both players get leaving, if we're getting around 150, 160 million pounds, that's enough to pay for Rodrygo and for Ekitike. So that solves, both what issues there. And the Mark Gay one, we've already got that money there. That's the Konsa money. We haven't replaced him in the squad. So go about 30, 35 million from Konsa. That'll be used on Gay. And that's why I feel like we're only gonna get three more players. I don't see us spending more, you know, in other areas. The dream would be to add another midfielder, but I think that midfielder, if it was Wharton, for example, it costs about at least 60 million, in my opinion. So maybe that's one we wait on until next year. Let him develop one more season. And once he comes, he'll be a bit more refined. So that's the way I think the club are envisioning their sort of recruitment for this summer, but also for next summer as well. Um, Mazzy said if Chiesa stays, he could be our secret weapon this season. He's a world class player. I do believe that he has, world class ability. Fortunately, he just hasn't shown it in the last couple of years. So therefore, it's more hopeful that he does showcase that talent. But I do feel like he'll be very impactful off the bench, just because if he's coming on for the last 20 minutes, he's going to play at a time where the opposition are tired. So that will benefit him where he's a bit more fresh, and then he can make those moves in between the gaps and then play on the shoulder and try and get on the end of crosses and you know try and get in a position where he's one on one with the keeper. Similar to that goal he scored against Newcastle in the Carabao Cup final. That's the kind of envision that I have where he's in those kind of transitions where he's up top on his own and he's hitting those kind of shots on goal. He has that as locker, got a great first touch, great shooting ability as well. For him, it's just maintaining fitness, maintaining his sharpness throughout the season, and I'm sure if he stays fit, he'll be heavily involved in the squad. That is just my opinion. I know Arne Slot didn't play him that much, and maybe does not have that same faith. But if you look at the squad, he definitely needs to utilize him a little bit more. And that's something I think also will learn from. He didn't use a lot of the squad players last year. This season, we're going to have to do that. Maybe use them a bit more in the first half of the season. And then, because of that, you've rested and you rotated a lot more with your first choice players. And the second half of the season, the first choice players won't be as tired because they were overworked in the first half. They felt jaded in the second half. So that would be the way I think Arne Slot should do it, in my opinion. Um, we read that comment there. Azrak says, Ozzy, your footballing knowledge is good. I agree with you, your starting lineup. Appreciate your comment there. Thank you for that. And Ozan Kabak agrees with that lineup. So big up you guys. Thank you for your comments. Kieran says, I think we will be a lot more creative next season with Verts starting over Soboslai and Ekitike over Nunez. I agree. I don't think Nunez will be here, but if he does remain at the club, then yes. Um, Verts will be signed over Soboslai and Ekitike will be signed over Nunez. But with Soboslai, I see him playing in more variation in terms of different roles. I think I can see him playing on the left, if on the right times as well, because that is the role that he played for Leverkusen, sorry, Leverkusen, Leipzig, and then he can also play in the double pivot because he's shown glimpses towards the last 2, 3 games of last season that he has that capability. He can do that. So for me, he's definitely going to be involved. Fans are already dismissing his sort of involvement next season. It's a squad game. Let's not be around the bush. One injury, then he's back in the mix. He's going to be in a role within the team at some shape or form. So, he will be in the mix, that's for sure. Delulu Steve, bring out yourself, Delulu Steve. He says, late to the show, but I disappoint Ozzy. I'm not, Steve. I know we spoke about this yesterday in terms of my gut feeling. Do I see us signing Isak? I thought we did. I don't know. I feel like, it was going to happen for us because of the concern from the Newcastle camp that Liverpool are ready to spend big. We have to kind of watch out. Maybe we got that inkling that they don't want to do business right now, or they were being very coy and they didn't really want to talk. So therefore, Liverpool did the right thing, in my opinion, to move on and find another target. And I'm pleased with the target of it being Ekitike. I think he's a player. that has great potential. I think he's very similar stylistically to Isak. So whatever we were thinking or had planned for Isak, Ekitike can replicate. Of course, he's probably not as experienced, he's probably not as prolific as Isak, but Isak at that age wasn't that prolific either. He was very inconsistent in terms of his finishing. But the benefit of Ekitike joining Liverpool, he's at a big club and he's got fantastic players around. He's got one of the best number 10s in world football in foreign vets, providing him with the assist, providing us through balls, and he'd be doing it on, a high volume basis. He should be firing in the goals. So I feel like he's gonna surprise a lot of fans. I won't say he's gonna get 30 goals, but I do feel like he's gonna get a good return in his opening season, and I think he's gonna grow from there on. So personally, I'm very excited, not disappointed in the slightest. So you have to evaluate the situation. You can't just be annoyed because we didn't get our prime target. I saw something online where someone was like FSG out because we didn't get Isak. Like that's wild. I've been very negative about FSG where I don't think they've shown ambition over the years. But this summer we can't talk. They've been doing the business. Richard Hughes, he's definitely made me, regret some of the things I said about him. But I was going based on what occurred, and he didn't do much in terms of his opening months of his job. But now he's showing his real quality. He's showing, his ruthlessness to an extent as well, where he's not messing around. He's yeah, as a stern negotiator, and he's trying to get the deals done in the right way. So you have to give him props. And so for me, if we don't get a prime target, it's not end of the world. I'm quite pleased that we didn't wait around because Newcastle didn't reject anything. We didn't place an offer. We approached them to say, look, we're interested in your player. Are you guys willing to do business? And they were probably like, we'll let you know. Like, that's the impression I get. They never said yes and they never said no. But because we have a pecking order in terms of a shortlist of who we'd want to sign, their prime target was Ekitike. So if they were already in discussion with him, we had to get on board and say, look, we want to sign the player. And because of that, the player was fully on board, told the club to reject any bids from Newcastle because he has his eyes set on a move to Liverpool. And can you blame him? So I'm pleased that it's Ekitike that is coming through the door. If it was Sesko, then I would be very disappointed to lose Steve. It would be a different stream if it was Sesko, and I wouldn't hide it, and I'd be very, very blunt with you guys. So I'm pleased it's Ekitike and not anyone else. So yeah, happy days right now in terms of our upcoming signing. Spirit of LSC fans, big up. So he says Ekitike, Rodrygo, Edison, and Gaze needed. Edison would be a great addition to our squad. I don't know if it's possible for this window. I don't know if Atalanta would be willing to sell him because he's one of their best players last season. But let's see. I would love it to be Edison. I really like the prospect of Alan Wharton coming in because I feel like he's got that great blend where he's a number 6, but he plays like a number 8. Like he's a good ball carrier, has a great passing range, left footed, so gives us a different dynamic in our midfield. I think he'd be a perfect player to add to our squad. I don't think he'll displace McAllister or Gravenberch in the lineup, but he's there for rotation and he could play alongside either one of them, or even Jones and Endo if they're still in the mix. So for me, he would be the perfect addition to our squad. I just don't think it will happen this window, unfortunately. We're doing too much, I guess, but you never know. Maybe next summer that is a player that we end up signing. Delulu Steve says, in any case, uh, King, I like that. King is still still a top young talent that can play for years to come. I agree. I feel like he's at that level right now because he had such a great season. Because in terms of development, he's done really well for the French under 21s. He was very unlucky at PSG because he was signed as an understudy for Mbappe. So when you're signed, for that type of player and a player that, let's be honest, has a bit of an ego, you know, the coaches aren't going to rotate the two players, are they? Mbappe is always going to start if he's fit. And when he's not fit, that's when Ekitike gets his move or gets his sort of selection into the team. But he might be, hot and cold where he's not played too many games. So with certain players, especially attackers, you need to find that rhythm. You need to play a few games to find yourself within the team And before you know it, Mbappe's back and he's back to the bench. So wasn't the right move. He's still very young at the time when he moved over to PSG. I believe he was like 19, 20 years of age. So still very young in his development. So he's gone over to Frankfurt. He's been given first team football. He's really evolved. And I feel like he's at that level where when he joins Liverpool, he can achieve that next level next season. Like he's literally on the cusp, in my opinion, because he's shown glimpses. He's shown that ability that he's got the right balance. He's got the right ingredients to be a top striker, and he's not just a finisher. He's not that type of striker. He's one of those strikers where he can drop deep. He can attack the channels. Got great dribbling ability. I've seen the way he dribbles sometimes. He's nutmegging people. He's doing flip flaps and he's not doing it for fancy tricks or just to be a showboat. He's not that type of player. He's doing it very effectively. He's doing it in the right positions of the pitch, and because of that, he's finding himself in good positions. He provided a lot of assists. He formed a great partnership with Mamouche last season as well before he made his move to Man City. And after he left, I thought, because we were linked to Ekitike for quite a long time. I remember seeing links like December, November time. So I always kept an eye on him, thinking, let's see how he performs, how he does. And Mamush was already making, airways in terms of his impact for Frankfurt. But the last part of the season, he was the main man, and then he definitely delivered. He was consistent with his goals, and they probably didn't even felt the loss of Mamush. They ended up qualifying for the Champions League, so that showed me that he's ready. He's got the character. He's got the responsibility to be the talisman for his team. So, it's good sort of traits to have, and it bodes well for when he joins Liverpool as well. So I'm excited about Ekitike joining Liverpool. Mazzy's comment is Liverpool fans wanted Isak because he scored 20 plus goals for 2 seasons. When Ekitike starts playing well and starts scoring a lot of goals, people will forget about Isak and start praising Ekitike. That's how football works, right? You have your judgments about certain players, but when they pull on that shirt and then start banging the goals, can't do anything but respect the player and give him the credit when it's due. So it's the same with Rodrygo. I'm not his biggest fan. I do think he's a good player. I'm not his biggest fan. I don't think he's world class yet. But if he comes into Liverpool and becomes world class, I'm all for it. So for me, it makes perfect sense to try and target a player Rodrigo. And I think Ekatike has that same kind of trajectory. He can become one of the best in Europe. He has that potential. So exciting times to be a Liverpool fan, that's for sure. Um, Kieran, the comments said the comments are flooding in tonight. Aussie struggling to get through to continue the show. I've got my bottle of water, so yeah, I'm trying my best to answer your questions. And yeah, it's a great shot because right now, I'm not gonna lie, it's a great time to be a Liverpool fan. So much going on in the last few days. Been hard to keep up. I feel like I'm on Twitter or X, whatever it's called nowadays, every hour, and there's like a new development, whether it's Newcastle related or Liverpool related. It's just like you just can't keep your eyes off stuff. So it's good that we're kind of coming to a conclusion in regards to the striker situation. It looks like we are going to get Ekitike. So then next week it will be another focus. It will be maybe a Luis Diaz replacement. Let's say Al Nassr place a bid of 100 million euros, and we're like, yep, accepted. And then that progresses, and then we try and conclude the deal with Gay. So we're in the right direction. I really hope that we get all of these players before the season starts. The season doesn't start that long. It's about 4 weeks now, I think. So the Ekitike deal will be done. The plan is, as in, I wouldn't know for sure, but the plan is to get that done by the end of this weekend. It's Thursday. Obviously, it's going to be midnight soon, so it's going to be Friday. They're trying to escalate that deal very, very much right now. They're trying to get that deal over the line. I think the terms have already been agreed. From what I read, I don't know who the source was, but apparently Liverpool and Ekitike have agreed a 6-year contract. So personal terms have been agreed. It's just the maybe the payment structure. Um, I don't think anything's been rejected. I think our bid was around 70 odd million. Maybe they want a bit more. So, I don't think we'll haggle. If they want 75, we'll give them 75 and try and get that deal done before the players fly. I'm not sure what day they fly out, but it will be at some point early next week. So if we can get Ekitike on board and off to a flight to Japan, then that would be the perfect scenario because then you can go and join the squad, train hard with the lads, get to know them, and then play preseason games. And then he's got his preseason on roll. Like he's ready in the mix. He's trying to play to maintain his fitness and gain match fitness as well. So for me, that makes the most sense. So I'm excited for this signing, and then we'll see what happens. With Diaz, it's different when you've got your own player leaving because it doesn't affect your preparation. But the Mark Gay one, I think it might be. I think you guys might be right in the chat where the centre back ends up being the next target, and then it comes down to the Luis Diaz later on, or the Luis Diaz replacement. Because I don't think the Rodrygo deal is going to be happening so soon. It will be where Diaz leaves, and then we make that move. And Diaz, I feel like he's holding on to a move within Europe. Like he's holding on to a move to Bayern, for example. So if he doesn't get his way, he's probably going to wait a long time, unfortunately. Or not a long time where, he doesn't get his deal, but he'll probably, you know, wait around in the next 2, 3 weeks and then decide what he wants to do. He might end up having to move to Saudi Arabia. Worst case scenario, he might pull on a Osimhen move where he ends up in Turkey because their transfer window, I believe, closes a week later than ours. And that's why Osimhen ended up going there, not because he wanted to go Galatasaray, it's because of his situation where he didn't want to go back to Napoli. There was an offer on the cards to go out on loan to Galatasaray, so that's why he went over there. So it might be something like that, but then we lose out on finding a replacement. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but hopefully we'll get some clarity. I think the Diaz one is probably one of the moves that's a bit of a stumbling block alongside the Nunez deal because Napoli have already found us a striker. So they're not in the market for another striker right now. So it's just we'll just have to wait and see what happens with Darwin Nunez. Does he stay for another season or do we sell him on? Another interest would be from the Saudi League, where I believe it's Al Nassr as well. So the manager there is George or Jorge Jesus. So he's actually Darwin Núñez's former manager. He was the manager at Benfica when he, was in sensational form before we signed him up. So they could be reunited at that club. So that would be a good connection for him because it's a coach that he's worked for. He goes over there, earns big bucks, makes the perfect sense for him to go over there. So let's see what happens. But I do hope Diaz and Nunes leave because then we can sign the replacements. And I think it would be adequate replacement in Rodrygo and Ekitike. Very exciting prospects. So yeah, very exciting times to be a Liverpool fan right now. Kieran saying, loving the chat tonight though. Big up yourself, Kieran. Appreciate you getting involved. Delise Steve says, fair play to Oz for honestly answering each question. The Michael Edwards of YouTube. Appreciate that. That's high praise there. I really do appreciate that, Steve. Um, like Kieran said, yeah, and Ozzy puts a lot of thought and time into each comment, so respect for that. Big up yourself, Kieran. I don't take any of you guys for granted, so when I've got people, flooding in comments, for me, it's only right to answer your questions the right way. And for me, it might be late night here, but I could talk football all day long. So for me, it's not a problem to answer your questions and have this football chat together and build our community as we go along because then we can do a lot of shows together and have these interesting discussions and debates. So yeah, I'm all for it. That's why I do these type of shows. This is why I do content creation. Raja Painting says Aussie, Arsenal got Gyökeres. Yes, they do. Chelsea got João Pedro and we've got Hugo Ekitike. Who do you think got the best ball? I think it's Ekitike. Good question. It's a very good question. I'm split on this one because I've seen João Pedro play for Chelsea and I was hugely impressed with his performances. But I do feel like Ekitike has more potential than Pedro. The only thing with Pedro is because he's got Premier League experience, he might have a more impactful season. I think he will potentially maybe score more goals because he's accustomed to league already. So that would be the only thing. I'd probably say they're on par right now. The Gyökeres one, I've mentioned Gyökeres on our shows before as well. I was sort of vouching for him because I thought, he's an experienced striker. but there were still question marks in terms of, can he handle it in the Premier League? Because he hasn't played Premier League football. He's played Championship football with Coventry. He was a Brighton player, but he never really made an appearance for them. So it was a bit of a question mark. I think Osman would have been the better fit if we were going for an Isak alternative, because that could have been a player we actually would have gone for right now, but it wasn't the case. So I think the Eucharist one, I don't know. I'm very intrigued to see how he does because in terms of stats and metrics, he's been banging in the goals for the last 2 years for Sporting Lisbon. Scored over 100 odd goals, which is a crazy stat. So for me, if he shows even 70% of that form, Arsenal have a great striker on hand. But is that enough for them? Because I don't feel like the team has improved. The left wing position needs to be improved. I know they get Madueke. I don't know if he's a starter for them. Like in my eyes, if Madueke was signed, I'd use him as a squad player to cover for Saka and then cover for whoever's the left wing. I don't think Martinelli is that good. So, but currently, I guess Martinelli is their first choice left winger. So, having a player like Madueke on the bench, on paper, makes good sense. So, I was quite surprised by the reaction from some of the Arsenal fans. But then again, Arsenal fans are very reactionary when it comes to these sort of breaking news, and they've been presented with a carrot where they thought they were going to get Rodrygo, Nico Williams, these type player, and then end up with Madueke. So it's pretty much power in their face. So that's why they reacted in that manner. But yeah, it's interesting to see what they do. They're signing another centre back. Is it Mosquera from Valencia? I don't know. Arteta loves the centre back. I don't know what it is. He's got this fascination of buying at least one or two centre back every summer without a shadow of a doubt. So they've not completely, impressed me in terms of their business. Man City have made some good adjustments to their team. But in terms of your question, it's a tie between Pedro and Ekitike. Just because I've seen Pedro play in the Chelsea shirt, I've been impressed. Maybe when I see Ekitike play some of our preseason games, I might have a different opinion altogether. But they're not far off. And I think because Pedro's got that 1 year experience ahead of him, might just put him in a better position. But talent wise, not far off in my opinion. Oza Kabat says, I believe it was a French source from Paris. Can't find it now. Do you know, I'm gonna have a look at myself because I think I saved it, but yeah, it was one of those. I think you are right. I think it was a French source. Um, I don't know how credible they are because you always got to take Twitter with a bit of pinch of salt because it could just be someone not trolling, but it could just be someone trying to tweet because they know it's the trending topic. It's the one that football fans, especially a high volume community like Liverpool fans, are going crazy over right now. So you have to kind of like jump on board and do what you can to try and get any attraction from Liverpool fans, and that's probably what the guy did. That's not me being disrespectful. It's just that I don't think I came across him before today, so I don't know, um, how credible of a source he is. But that is the notion that um, in terms of Ekitike and what the current agreement is in place, that it's a 6 year deal. It didn't mention salary. I think I've got him. So let me upload it onto the screen and then I'll present it for you guys. So let me know if this is the source that you saw as well, Ozan. Here we go. So this is the one that I saw. So Fabrice Hawkins is the guy. It doesn't say if it's French, but his tweet was Hugo Ekitike and Liverpool reached an agreement over a 6 year contract. The player only wants Liverpool. In the last 24 hours, he has rejected Manchester United, Newcastle have already left talks. Negotiations ongoing between Frankfurt and Liverpool. So that is the current update on that scenario. So yeah, so we'll see what happens with Ekitike. It will probably be at least a 5, 6 year contract. I don't see it being less. We generally give 5 year contracts, but maybe because he's younger. Because Verts was 5 years, wasn't it? So I don't know. Maybe it should have been where we give long contracts. We should do what Chelsea do, where try and give them very long contracts so we can pay less installments and end up signing more players. But maybe we haven't jumped on that trend at the minute. Uh, let me go through the comments again. Let me see which was the last comment. There we go. Where are we? So big up to Chris. He said it's also a league he could tear up. Is that in terms of Ekitike in the Premier League? Yeah, I definitely think he has the ability to do so, 100%. Azrak says, with all these signings, where is Cody Gakpo going to play? Or is he going to play a supporting role next season? If Rodrygo is the guy that we get, I feel like with him being the new shiny toy, the new signing, he'll get the pathway to make that position his own. Um, I think Gakpo will still have a very important role in the team. He might not be in the team week in, week out, but he'll still definitely be a player off the bench or in rotation with Rodrygo. If I'm trying to manifest it, if Rodrygo becomes our Liverpool signing, but he's also a player that can play up top because we don't have too many strikers on board. And I know Arne Slot didn't really play him up top last season, but I do feel like it's a position we can utilize Gakpo next season because he's shown it under Jurgen Klopp that he can play that role and he has a great finishing ability as well. So for me, should be a good option for us, and especially with Diaz leaving, you know, so one of the left wingers has to be multifunctional to be able to play up top as well if required. So for me, Gakpo will be heavily involved, but on paper, um, if Rodrigo was to join, I think Rodrigo would be the starter. But that's just my opinion. Um, Christian goalkeeper for Gakpo. I'm not sure what you're referencing. He's a long. I think you mentioned in terms of he's a tall boy. Yeah, he is. Doesn't use his frame enough though. I do feel like he needs to get himself in better heading opportunities, but maybe that's not his game. Ozan came out in the comments says, smash the likes if you already haven't to help Ozzy grow his channel. Big up yourself, Ozan. Come back. Appreciate your support as always. Those three are very different. I think he was just asking in terms of who's going to have the most impact. And Kieran's list is Gyökeres, Ekitike, Pedro, which is very interesting. I've been very impressed with Pedro, so maybe I'm gaslighting just because I saw a couple matches, but it's an interesting debate. It's probably a debate we're going to have as the season goes on because we'll see, how these players adapt in their new team and see how well they do during the season. So it's going to be very, very interesting. Going to spark a lot of debates, that's for sure. Chris says, I never like a video if someone tells me to smash a like. My phone would get broken. Fair enough, if that's your stance. Um, Kevin says, very good question, though. I'm trying not to have recently bias change my opinion with João Pedro. Maybe that's what I'm feeling right now. But I've always watched João Pedro for Brighton. I thought, do you know what? There's a player there, and I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool went for him. We were interested, but I think maybe we thought Ekitike has the highest ceiling, which I agree with. So that's probably why we didn't go and push for that move for João Pedro. But I do like the way he plays. I think he's a very interesting player, and I think Chelsea have done really well to recruit him. I think he's definitely going to help their attack going forward. He still needs to do more to be over Gyökeres and Ekitike. Gyökeres for me just question marks. Can he hack it in the Premier League? That's the big question. And it's a question for Ekitike as well because he's not played in the Premier League either. So it's going to be very, very interesting in terms of how these players embed themselves. Chris with the comment says, Joker is an interesting name there. Is not on the level of Pedro. Liverpool should have taken Pedro. I think they were definitely he was definitely a player that they had assessed and they scouted over the course of last season. But I think, like I said, they've gone for Ekitike because maybe they feel like he's got a higher ceiling. But I also think in terms of how we play, Ekitike is more of the complete forward where he's a number 9, but he can drop deep as well and be a great link-up play, and has a good finishing range. He's a great dribbler, likes to attack the channels. So because of that, he's got a wider range of different traits and abilities. So I think that's why we've gone ahead with um, Ekitike instead. Just going to check. I saw a very interesting picture today. Let me see if I can load it up. Um, it was a sort of like a map of Alexander Isak and Ekitike. So for that would be a good kind of comparison in terms of their last season football. Let me bring it up and then I can showcase it to you guys as well. Let me upload it here. We'll probably cover up the whole screen, so apologies, a little bit impromptu, but I thought it might be a very interesting one to show everyone. Okay, it's loading up. So this is something I came across today on social media. And with these charts, a bit hard to follow, but with the lines, the closer it is to the edge, is showing them how far they are in terms of their stats and their metrics. And I feel like um, if you look at so red is Ekitike and blue is Isak. Look how far down Ekitike is. Look, he's got a higher rate in terms of shot creation actions, assisted goals, assist, non-penalty, XG. Uh, Isak has more non-penalty goals, uh, clearances. Ekitike is ahead. Blocks. Well, the striker shouldn't really be counting that kind of metric, but aerials, duels won. Um, Dribbling, they're the same, which is interesting. Dribbles of percentage of dribbles tackled, progressive passes. So Ekitike is ahead. More touches, more successful take-ons, more progressive carries. Uh, what do you call it? Isak has more progressive passes. Pass completion is the same in terms of percentage, and um, Ekitike has a higher passes attempt. So in terms of these metrics for between Ekitike and Isak in the last 365 days, Ekitike is above. So that's what I'm saying. He's got the stats. He's definitely the next one up. Like that's the kind of capability um, that he has. So that's why I'm so excited for the signing of Ekitike. I feel like he's definitely going to surprise a lot of people. Newcastle fans are thinking, "Oh, you've just signed any random player. We've known about him for a while." So he's definitely going to be someone that would definitely keep a few mouths shut, to say politely. Uh, Back to the comments. Let's see. Comment from Kieran says, "I think Arsenal fans aren't happy because they want an upgrade on Martinelli instead of a backup. So I understand their frustration. To be fair, yeah, I get it as well. I think he fits the profile to be a backup for Saka more so than Martinelli because for Chelsea, predominantly plays on the right, can play on the left. I know he's done that in the Club World Cup, but I think he's better on the right because he likes to cut in and shoot from distance. But they might sign another player. They could still get because they don't have a backup for Saka. They haven't had one for a long time. I mean, the last person was Nelson, Reece Nelson, but he's over at Fulham now. So they've got an adequate cover for that position now. But then I guess you can put Nwaneri as well, but he likes to play in the number 10 role. So, depends on how you look at it. But yeah, I guess on paper, you have Nwaneri and then you have Saka and then you've got Martinelli and Madueke. Yeah, it's a little bit underwhelming. Kind of get their frustration, but um, it's because they've been given the fake news of Rodrygo, Nico Williams. So, their head was getting big, thinking, oh, we're going to sign elite talent. Then you go down and back to reality, it's Madueke. I'm not saying he's a terrible player, but there's levels to these kind of things, isn't it? So yeah, for me, I understand the frustration, but I think it'd be a decent squad player for them. Next comment here from Julius Steve says, "Shame what happens to Musan in the Club World Cup. Hope he doesn't miss the World Cup." Yeah, I didn't watch it live, but I saw it afterwards, and yeah, it was a horrific one. It really was. Thankfully, I don't think it's a very long-term layoff. He should be back, I think, by the end of the year. So of course, that gives him a few months to get back to match fitness, and then should be ready for the World Cup next summer. So yeah, hoping he gets a speedy recovery. Very talented player, very exciting player to watch. So hopefully, yeah, he comes back stronger than ever as well, because those kind of injuries does impact a player going forward. So hopefully, he's back and fully recovered from that horrific injury. Lamina's built himself. He said, "Called it, bro. You get Ekitike, we keep Isak, and we go after our striker as backup. Everybody's happy." Yeah, fair enough. But let me know in the chat, which strikers are you going for? Because I'm seeing Darwin Nunez. Would you be happy about Darwin Nunez? And I'm also seeing Wissa and Calvert Lewin. So between the three, who would you go for? Or do you have another target in mind? Because I thought Ekitike was the guy that you guys wanted, but of course he decided to join us instead. So feel free to let me know who you would want as your next strikers, or next striker, I should say, for Newcastle. Chris Wissa is going to Spurs. I read that as well, but I didn't know how concrete it was. But I think Newcastle have got themselves in the running, so they joined the race to get the player. Remains to be seen what happens and where he ends up. Newcastle getting ghosted yet again. They missed out on Del Pedro, missed out on Ekitike, now they're getting missing out on Wissa as well. So the options are slim now. You know, not a lot of players out there. Chris says, "What the f is Fabrice Hawkins?" I don't know. I saw this tweet earlier on. Um, so I thought I'd say I don't know in terms of credibility, but he mentioned that apparently we agreed a 6-year deal. So whether it's facts or not, we'll soon find out in due course. Mine is a very interesting question for me. Number one, Ekatike. Two, Pedro. Three, Eucharist, because Eucharist played too long in the championship. Yeah, I hear you. Other comment says mine was Act 2 Foot from France, but their sources was in turn Fabrice Hawkins. So yeah, they're all correlating the same kind of news. So yeah, I guess it's from the same source. Azra says, Ozzy, just wondering where will Szoboszlai play next season, because we really need his running power in midfield. I think he'll be used a lot more in the team than people are sort of envisioning. I think he will be playing either on the left, if we don't have adequate, options there. And I think he'll be in rotation with Wirtz as well. There'll be games where maybe Wirtz plays on the left and then Szoboszlai plays in the number 10 role. If he doesn't start, he's a great option for us to have off the bench because of his running ability, his tenaciousness in terms of being aggressive in that pressing on the front. But also he brings different qualities. He's got a great shot on him, brings quality on and off the ball. So for me, he's a great player to have in the squad. Whether he starts or he's off the bench, he's going to be a very valuable option for us. So for me, I still have high hopes for Szoboszlai. I have huge expectations for him that he's going to deliver and do well for us next season. Kieran says, I always knew Pedro was talented and has great awareness and gifted on the ball, but I doubt his scoring ability. He has shown that he has that in the locker now. So we'll see if he continues. Yeah, that is going to be the intriguing thing next season in terms of how he plays, how consistent of a goal scorer is going to be. Um, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I know we shouldn't be excited about seeing how other players evolve in other teams, but from a neutral point of view, from just being a football fan, I'm intrigued to see how he performs, because the way he played in the Club World Cup, he looked really talented. Even the goal he scored in the final, just the dinked effort, it was a great finish. So yeah, very, very exciting player. Uh, Rajiv Pinkton says, Aussie bro, make sure you have a cold drink after the show, because tonight you're answering a lot of questions like an MP. Anyways, your football knowledge is excellent. Big up yourself. I will treat myself to a drink. I've got a 2 liter bottle here. It's almost halfway done here. So yeah, I'll be fine to answer the rest of the questions. Um, Kieran says that graph comparing Isak and Ekitike just proves how stats don't show the whole story more than anything is true, but it's a good indication in terms of what Ekitike brings to the table. So that is why I use that graph, because fans are already doing lazy comparisons with Nunez, and I feel like that's just not justified. And people just look at numbers, but you have to look at percentages in terms of what they have brought to the table in the last season. And I'm not saying Ekitike is the better player, or he's going to have a better season than Isak. But what it shows from our point of view, that we're signing a player that can hold his own and compete against a striker like Isak. It has the credentials, it has the ability to go toe to toe with him. So that gives me confidence that we're signing a very good player, a player that can definitely, like I said earlier on, go on to our next level. That's the key for us with the new addition of striker in Hugo Ekitike. Mike says, when PSG signed the teenage Ekitike, why did they sell him to Frankfurt? He wasn't happy there. He didn't get a lot of matches. He didn't get a lot of game time because he was brought in to be the backup for Mbappe. And when you're back up to Mbappe, you know, unless he's injured, you're not gonna get game time. Mbappe is not a player you rotate because if you do that, he's gonna throw a tantrum and then he's gonna ask for a transfer request. He's gonna want to leave as soon as possible. So he's a player who's of high quality, but he does have an ego. So with Ekitike, very young when he joined there, 19, 20, I think he was. He actually rejected a move to Newcastle because Newcastle agreed a deal with his French club, which was Stade de Reims, and in the end, the player was like, "No, I want to go to PSG." So he rejected Newcastle not for the first time. Looks like he's rejecting them for the second time now. And for him, it was a good move in the end because he wasn't getting any game time there, and I think he wanted to challenge himself, maybe go to a different league and play for a team where he will get first team football. May not be a guaranteed starter, but being a team that play good football and that can help within his sort of progression and development. And Frankfurt have been a team on the rise the last few years. Of course, the former manager is now the Crystal Palace manager in Oliver Glasner, and he, of course, he would have helped him in terms of his development. But last season, he showcased his ability that he's a top talent, and it looks like he's on the way to Liverpool. So yeah, exciting times for us Liverpool fans. Sahin Onal says, Osimhen, welcome to Galatasaray. Is that official? Please let me know in the chat. Because I'm hearing all kinds of reports about Osimhen in terms of, it looked like he was going there, then there's been a bit of a stumbling block. Um, I'm just checking online now, so there seems to be continuing talk. So yeah, you might have to hold off, doing the welcome statements right now. But it looks like he could be joining Galatasaray, which I'm sure you're happy about. Being a Galatasaray fan, he had a fantastic season for you guys last year. So yeah, should be um, a great addition to your squad. So yeah, congrats to the Galatasaray fans if he does end up joining. Uh, Kieran says, "Yeah, I agree. Graphs are useful, but shouldn't be used to choose who's the better player." Agree. For me, I used it in terms of what Ekitike brings to the table. Why does he have similar traits? Because a lot of the stats that you saw, they were quite close or even equal at some point. It shows the similarity to how they play. So for me, just an indication. That's why I don't really present too many graphs. But I thought that was an interesting one to show fans that if you have some reservations about Ekitike, have a look at this. This is what he produced in the last 12 months. He has the capability. He can challenge Isak toe to toe. So we have a very special player on our hands, in my opinion. He said, "I know you weren't saying Ekitike based on yeah, but you're right though because I feel like, and this is the thing with the content that I present. I try to not bring too much stats into the shows. I like to bring it in terms of certain context, so it paints the picture. But if I'm just going based on stats, it just shows that that's more of my focus. I'm more of a person where I sit down and watch the game, and it's an eye test thing for me. I like to base my opinions on what I watch rather than what I read into the numbers. So I would like to bring it here and there, but yeah, I know what you meant. But some people might, use it a bit differently where they want it to be heavily focused on stats and make judgment based on stats as well, which isn't the right way to do things. But I can't really cuss us, use cuss people using stats because that's how FSG roll. They make the smart recruitments through data analysts and all these different metrics and scouting reports. So yeah, it's why we're successful. So we can't, disregard stats too much, but always got to put context in terms of when you bring it up in conversations. Uh, Now I'll go through. I've got quite a few rumors to go through, but I'm going to do it in quick fire fashion because we have spoken about it during the week, so they're not breaking news. There's one or two that I'll touch on that happened just before I went live. In terms of the Rashford one, bizarre rumor circulating that uh, we're in the bid or we're trying to, we've put him in the shortlist and he could be a potential target for us. This is not happening. Current Manchester United player. strong affiliation with Manchester and Manchester United, there is no way he's moving from Manchester United over to Liverpool. It's not going to happen. It's not something he would do because he's a boyhood Manchester United fan. He, you know, probably despises us. So because of that, um, he's not going to want to join the arch rivals. It's not, it doesn't work like that. So for me, yeah, this is not a realistic option. But the current rumors that Liverpool are piling up a list of Premier League experienced strikers. Maybe we're looking for a number two striker. With Ekitike coming on board, maybe we are looking for a backup striker. So some of the names that we mentioned are Ollie Watkins. Um, would I take Ollie Watkins? I actually would. I think he's a good player, and I still feel like he has a lot in the locker, a lot in the tank to help Liverpool. Whether he's as a starter or off the bench, I would probably have him on the bench. And I feel like with his experience in the league, I feel like he can definitely have an impact for Liverpool. He's played in the Champions League now, did it last season, had a good campaign. So for me, he would be a good option, a stopgap signing. If it is a sort of real story, then it depends on the fee. It depends on the length of the contract and probably salary as well. Because I'm not sure how much it earns. So it will just depend on these kind of details. But if it was available at £20 million, that kind of range, I'd be on it. To be fair, I think it would be a good one to have in the squad. I think he'll definitely add strength and depth in our attack line. So for me, I wouldn't rule out Ollie Watkins at all. Um, Another player that was linked early in the week was Mateta. But with Mateta, bit sort of unclear in terms of the transfer fee because some sources were suggesting that it was £30 million. Some are saying it's in the region of 40 or 50 million. I wouldn't pay more than 40, and I think he would be a fantastic second choice striker for us. If you've got Ekitike, who's a young player right now, having a player like Mateta with experience, um, he's 28 years of age. It's a great balance. One young striker, one experience. You can rotate the two and utilize them whenever we need them or whenever we play certain oppositions. I think Mateta would be useful against lower oppositions where his physicality would be used to his strength. So for me, I would not mind Mateta. I think he'd be a great addition to our squad. Just depends on the deal if it suits us or not. But he would be an interesting option. Another striker that we've been linked to is not Premier League, but is Samuel Ogehowa. Now he's a striker that was very strongly linked with a move to Chelsea, if you guys remember last summer, but that deal fell through and ended up moving over to Porto. I've seen him play a couple of times, watched him in the Club World Cup, looked all right, but I haven't seen enough to have a strong opinion about him. I don't know if this would be the right option for us. I don't know if it fit our style of play because he's more of a target man than anything else, and I don't know what kind of fee Porto would demand. They would probably give us an inflated price because we're a Premier League team. So for me, I don't think this is a viable option, but you never know. Chelsea definitely wanted the player last year, so he definitely has something about him. But for me, not the right profile. For Liverpool, and then let's stick to Chelsea. We've been linked to a move for Nicholas Jackson. For me, it's a no go. I don't rate him that highly. Decent striker, but not of Liverpool standard. He's actually been linked with a move to Manchester United. I think that's more to his level. So I think he's better off moving over there. Another player that we've been linked to, another Chelsea player, is Christopher Nkunku, a player that I actually really rated before he joined Chelsea when he was a player at Red Bull Leipzig. In fact, we were in the mix to sign him or Darwin is. That was the two strikers that we were after, kind of like Isak and Ekitike, I guess. That was the two strikers that we were linked to at the time. And then we ended up signing Nunez. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked out. But then for Nkuku as well, on paper, has very good ability. I think he's a top player. But injuries, unfortunately, has affected his progression and his um, impact for his current club, which is Chelsea. So because he's become a bit more injury prone, I would have reservations of making any offer for Nkuku. So I think that's a no-go as well. Speaking of Chelsea, they have been showing strong interest to sign one of our primary targets in terms of the defensive area, and that is Joe Hatto. Apparently, they are trying to hold talks with Ajax to sign the young defender. So, if there's any truth to the rumor, should Liverpool get involved and hijack the deal, or is this all paper talk? In my opinion, I think it's all paper talk. I don't think Joe Hatto will be on the move this summer. I think I don't know if he's officially said it out loud, but I've read somewhere that he is wanting to stay for another season. They've just got our former assistant manager in Heitinger to become their manager, and it's a player. I think he's coached Hato as well in the past because Heitinger coached the youth team at Ajax as well. So he's probably someone that holds of high regards, and I feel like it might be best for him to play another season in the Eredivisie, get more experience under his belt. He's already a very experienced 18-year-old, and he's played a huge amount of games. But maybe one more season, and then he'll be ready to make that switch to a big European team. So I do feel like Liverpool would be a team that he would look at. I'm predicting Alan Wharton for next summer. I think Hatto might be a signing for us next summer as well because of Robertson having 1 year left in his contract. With him going to play out the last year, we'll probably sign Hato as his backup replacement. So we'll have Kerkez and Hato as our two left backs next summer onwards. And then the good thing about Hato is he can also cover the centre back position. So for me, he's a signing for the summer 2026. That's my prediction. So let's see if I'm right with that. Um, Next player is Ibou Konate. Situation hasn't changed. But unfortunately, the theme is consistent. Every day we're hearing the same thing, and that is that Konate wants to play for Real Madrid, and he will run out the final year of his current contract at Liverpool. So the big question is, and I've asked this previously as well, but should Liverpool try and sell him now or let him play for the season to ensure that we don't weaken the squad? In my opinion, if the player has shown zero indication that he wants to sign a new contract, he should be sold this summer. If he's, suggesting that he will look into it and he is in favor of staying at the club, then the club will have to take his word and, see how it goes during the season and get him on board. But I don't want a repeat of that Trent Alexander-Arnold scenario ever again. That saga was ongoing. It was frustrating. We all knew the outcome, but it just took very long for the outcome to be laid out for the world to see. So for me, I don't want Liverpool to be taken for a ride again, and it's unfortunately involving the same team in Real Madrid. So very frustrating, but it's one of those things. We'll see what happens with Konate. I would love for him to stay. I would really rate him very highly, but I have not really got a strong inkling that he will stay. It just feels like he's ready to move over to Real Madrid. It might not be completely down to money. It will definitely play a part. Don't get me wrong, but maybe because there's such a high French contingent there, where there's a lot of French players from his national team there. It's just the move that makes the natural sense where he goes there, plays with his French teammates, and plays at the highest level there. So it could be something on the cards for him. I hope it's not. I hope he remains as a Liverpool player for years to come. But we'll find out in the coming weeks, and then we'll probably find if there's no clarification. Then we'll probably have to wait and see during the season. Next player, Ben Doak. Now he has a line of a number of Premier League teams interested for his services. Forest are the latest team to register their interest as they look to find a replacement for Elanga, who, of course, has just recently joined Newcastle. So the question is, should Liverpool keep Ben Doak for one more season after he had a great spell for Middlesbrough last season, or should we sell him on this summer because his stock is quite high? It might be the latter for me. I think because the stock is quite high, maybe it's worth us selling him now because I think we'll get around 30 odd million, which is quite a big rate for someone at his age and his current situation. So I feel like it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Ben Dodd. Does he get a chance to play with Liverpool for one more year, or do we sell him on and use that money to reinvest in other positions? It'll be very interesting. I don't think we'll be heavily reliant on that 30 million because if Diaz and Nunez leave, then that 150 or whatever money generated will be used to sign Ekitike and also the left wing position, which we're hoping is Rodrygo. The Margay one that is being financed by the Quansa sale. So we don't really need to sell him, sorry. So maybe we can save him and use him for one season and see how he does because he'll be an interesting prospect for us where he's predominantly plays on the right side, 2-footed, can cut in as well, great pace, great turn of speed, showed that against Preston over the weekend. So he's definitely a player that has huge potential. So let's see what happens. I wouldn't be annoyed or disappointed if he stays, but if there is interest from a lot of clubs, maybe this is the time to sell him on. Next player, and didn't want to bring this up, but it was circulating earlier on today, and that is in regards to Alexis McAllister. Now, apparently, McAllister has turned down an approach from Bayern Munich and has made it clear that he would only consider leaving Liverpool for Real Madrid. Now, my blood boils whenever I hear Real Madrid being linked with another player of ours. Right now, they're just taking a mick. Can't their scouts just do their job rather than poaching Liverpool players? It's laziness on their part. But in terms of rumor, I think it's complete nonsense. I think the journalists or whoever's put it out there is doing their best to get more traffic to their media outlet with these sort of clickbait headlines. But we'll have to have this uncomfortable conversation in the future, unfortunately, because it could be a possibility that McAllister wants to leave in order to play for one of the Spanish giants. It's always an aspiration for South American players to move over to play whenever they venture into Europe. So can't rule it out. But what I can say is not happening anytime soon. So let's not dwell on it at all. And let's just focus on seeing McAllister start for Liverpool at the start of next season, which of course takes place in a month's time. So that's the one we're looking forward to. And another rumor that was circulating just before I started the show, and that was Harvey Elliott. And apparently West Ham are said to be trying to move for Harvey Elliott in the next few days. The club have been in talks with Liverpool all week, and there is hope a deal could be achieved. Very interesting rumor in terms of the club being West Ham. Is that the right club for Harvey Elliott? I think it's a club that will offer him first team football. So if that is his, you know, main requirement, then yep, it will be a team because they've sold Kudus now, so they have a vacant space in the lineup. He gets to move back to London, so that could be another plus point for him. So he's closer to family and friends. West Ham are a good club, in terms of their aspirations. They always are challenging for European places, not Champions League, but close enough to the Europa League or the Conference League. So it wouldn't be a bad team. Could be an interesting proposition. I definitely see some legs in this because of the sale of Kudus, but whatever money they generated, most of that will probably be coming into our pockets because I would want between 40 to 50 million for Elliot due to his, prominent form and display in the Euros for the under 21s. His stock has risen a little bit more in my opinion, so he should be worth 45, 50 million. So let's see what happens with Harvey. West Ham are also linked with Tyler Morton. So it'll be interesting to see, if he moves over to um to the Hammers as well. So let's see what happens. But definitely see something happening in regards to Elliot moving over to West Ham. And the final rumor that I have listed is Giovanni Leone. Now, this young centre back has been linked with a move to Liverpool. Uh, I've only watched a couple of compilations, so I'm not going to say I'm an expert on him, but he looks a very decent talent, very special talent, in fact. Only 18 years of age, playing with real aggression, makes a lot of crunching tackles, very dominant in the air, decent on the ball. For an 18-year-old, he's got a very high ceiling. I'll give him that. But just before I come on the show, I did my research and saw that Inter Milan looks like to be his next destination. They have been negotiations with Parma. I think from Inter Milan's point of view, it's a fantastic signing for them. Of course, their team, and especially their defense is an aging defense, so they need to bring in fresh blood and maybe signing the next big centre back in Italian football. Ticks all the boxes and makes the most sense. So Leone will be expected to sign for Inter Milan very, very soon. So that is the last rumor that we're discussing. I'm just gonna go through some of the comments and then we'll close the show. I'm trying to find the last comment. Let's have a look. Okay, this was the last comment from Kieran. It says, unfortunately, I need to go and get some sleep now. It's been a great show, and we have had some really good chats. Could easily chat about football all night. See you next stream. Good night. Big up yourself, Kieran. Thank you for your kind comment. Then, yes, I will see you in the next stream for sure. Uh, Delusi says, thank you for your time speaking with the fan base, Aussie. No problem at all, Delusi. Appreciate you guys engaging and getting involved. Azrak says Aussie with Nunez's move to Napoli not happening now. Who is going to buy him and how much are they going to get him? Great question, Azrak. The other clubs that he was linked with involved Atletico Madrid, but for some reason I don't see that happening, especially where Griezmann was supposed to leave, but I think he's staying there now. So doesn't look like they're in for another striker. Seems to be one destination, and that is over to the Middle East in Saudi Arabia and in particular Al Nassr. So maybe we do a double sweep. Diaz and Nunez go to Saudi Arabia for a combined fee of £150 million. And yeah, that should be the deal that gets the job done for us. So I think that's the sort of destination that is very highly likely. But again, today he was linked to a move to Newcastle. So maybe Newcastle might want to try and sign the Uruguayan striker, but they're gonna have to pay big bucks. We're not gonna give him a cut price or anything like that. I just thought of something. What if? And I don't want to premeditate stuff like this, but we all know we have an interest in a particular player at Newcastle, apart from Isak, right? Which is Anthony Gordon. What if the clubs were going to have a discussion to have not a swap deal as such, but have some sort of agreement where we give them Nunes for 50 million and then they cut the price for Anthony Gordon, and then we get him for 50 million as well. So it's like a swap deal, but not officially a swap deal because it kind of confuses the dynamics of when you submit financial documents to the league, you know, you're not really showing much of a profit or loss. So in that regards, you just do it as two separate deals, but the discussions have been combined in one meeting room, if that makes sense. So just putting it out there. So don't be surprised if you see that circling. I haven't seen anything online, but if that happens, then either someone's watching the show and has written it as part of their website, or that is actually happening in the background. So we'll see. Because I know a lot of fans are on the Gordon train. They want him. They've been wanting him for 12 months. I'm not on it. I don't think I will be on it. I would rather have other players, and I think there's better players out there for that left wing position. So for me, I'm not on board with that. But in terms of Nunez, could stay, could move over to the Premier League to Newcastle and stay in the Premier League. But I think it would be best for him to go to Saudi. He'll get a big paycheck there. Uh, nice lifestyle there. Hot weather. You know, sort of nice surroundings as well. But at the same time, play football to his kind of not his level. That's a bit rude. I think he'll be able to adapt to that level very, very quickly, and I think he'll be able to showcase his talent and play amongst good players. There's a lot of players moving over to Saudi, so he'll be at a good league, get some good money, and yeah, it will help his position to get selected for the Uruguayan squad for the World Cup next year as well. So that's something he's definitely looking towards. Um, Mazzy says, with Liverpool making all these great signings, which team can realistically challenge us for the Premier League title next season? I think the team that will challenge us the most is Man City. I think they've made some really smart signings this window. I think Chelsea will be in the mix. Arsenal as well, but I haven't been overly impressed with their signings, to be fair. I don't feel like they've upgraded that much. I know they've got the striker now in Eucharist, but other areas I don't know if they've got the strength in depth. Newcastle have an outside chance depending on who they recruit. But the strongest contender would be Man City, and I still believe Liverpool are favourites to win the title based on what we've done in this window and what we're going to do as well. We're in a very, very strong position. So hopefully Liverpool are in a position to do back-to-back titles going forward. Saiho now says, I have one last question. Where will Galatasaray finish in the Champions League? With the current format, I'd expect Galatasaray to qualify to the last, or should I say, the round of 16. And depending on their, depending on luck and, being drawn into certain teams, maybe around round of 16 or maybe quarterfinal. But I think round of 16 would be a decent target and a good achievement for the Turkish side as well. So I think that would be my prediction for Galatasaray next season in the Champions League. Um, Stuart says, bit of Stuart, he says, which country are you from? I'm in Nigeria. So I am from the UK. So I live in London. So that is where I'm from. But in terms of my heritage, my family, we're from Pakistan. So that is my heritage there. Stuart says, can we get both Ekitike and Isak? It's not out of the window because financially, yes, we can afford to sign both strikers. But will it happen? For me, very, very unlikely. I don't think we'll sign both strikers. It will be Ekitike, and I think Isak will probably stay at Newcastle for at least another season. Uh, Kenny, big up yourself. Kenny says, I told you Isak isn't going to Liverpool this window. The world would have left the country. The world would be would have been hell on. Yeah, I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I get your point. I think in terms of how it was presented, we made the approach, and it probably was clear indication from Newcastle that they didn't want to do any business. So we've gone on and looked at another target. But let's see what happens. It'll be interesting to see what you guys do in terms of your business. Do you make further additions to the squad, or are you content with what you have? So remains to be seen how Newcastle conduct their business because I feel like, and I'm not just saying it because I'm a Liverpool fan, I feel like maybe we should have accepted, whatever proposal we had, because that money could have been used to elevate Newcastle even further. And I feel like, a lot of fans are saying, you guys are title challengers. I don't think you're quite to that level. But with that money and you could have brought more players into your squad, quality players as well, you could have been in that mix. But I do think Newcastle will be in and around the top four places. I think they'll definitely challenge for that area. Don't think they'll challenge for the title just yet. But having said that, it depends on who you guys sign as well. So we'll have a prediction show once the transfer window closes. So make sure to tune in for that. Stuart says we don't want Gordon. I don't want Gordon. Looks like you don't want him. But unfortunately, some of our fans in our fan base want him. So that's why I've had to mention it. I don't want him. I'm not on board with Gordon joining Liverpool at all. Um, Stuart says swap Isak with Nunez. It's a possibility. You know, I'm sorry, Kenny says, Stuart's, if you can't be sensible, don't open your mouth. A little bit harsh, but, you could rule it out. It could be a discussion that they have. Um, but you guys are linked to us. He's not just, presenting a fake rumor that is the current news where you guys are interested in signing Nunes. So if that happens, how are you going to feel, Science says, thank you. No, big up yourself, Science. Thank you for your comments there. Um, Sue says, who's just a replacement? It'll be interesting. It could be Chiesa. It might be where we don't sign another striker, or it could be where we sign someone like a Mateta or someone of that ilk. Only time will tell. But I think my prediction is that we'll sign Ekitike to be our main striker, and he will replace Nunez. I think Luis Diaz will leave, and we'll sign a new left winger. I'm hoping it's Rodrygo, and then we start Mark Gay, and I think that will be the end of our transfer spending. Um, so for me, that would be the three signings that we make. Um, Mazzy says, Ozzy, how highly do you rate Anthony Gordon? He's only about having lightning pace, or has he got technical ability? Also, if you could pick one, Gordon or Rodrigo. So I'll answer the latter part of your comment. It's Rodrigo all day long. I don't rate him very highly. I think he's a good player at most. Um, one of his strengths is his pace, where he's very quick on the ball. Hard worker, does work hard for his team, but I don't think he has the consistency when it comes to end product. I don't think he's that type of player. So for me, um, not Liverpool standard. That's how I'm looking at it. Not a bad player, just not Liverpool standard. And I think fans are getting sort of stuck on that kind of motion where he's a boyhood's red, he's a scouser, he's going to fit the bill. I don't want to sign players based on sentiment. I want it to be where we sign players based on their ability and do they have the right credentials to be a Liverpool player. You can't just sign players based on demographics. That's not going to work. Otherwise, we're going to have a team of scouts and they might not be good enough. So, we have to be very careful, with that kind of notion and who we sign into our team. But for me, I've never been on that golden train at all. The comparison I always use, and I'll probably mention it again if Gordon's brought up, is when we had Xabi Alonso all those years ago, and Rafa Benitez was trying to sign Gareth Barry to replace him. That's the level in comparison there, because Xabi Alonso was elite, miles ahead, but Gareth Barry was player that maybe Rafa thought would be good for our team. But I feel like they were never on the same wavelength. Alonso was levels above Gareth Barry, and I'm not gonna have a debate if anyone disagrees with that. So for me, that that is the comparison. Because everyone wanted Diaz to be sold last summer, and I disagree with that very, very strongly. And I was very surprised by some of the fans that really wanted Anthony Gordon ahead of Diaz. People were quick to dismiss Diaz. Obviously, now in hindsight, Diaz had a great season, so it makes him look better, doesn't it, in terms of what he produced. But of course, he's not happy, so he wants to leave. So that's why those rumors are resurfacing that we're going to be in for a left winger because Diaz is going to leave. I, for one, I'm not on that boat. On that boat at all. I think with Gordon, maybe because he's good mates with Curtis Jones, he's always on holiday with him. It just feels like he wants to be there. I read something earlier on as well that he was telling England players when he was part of the camp that he's going to move to Liverpool. Like that's going to happen. So don't know who he was speaking to, but I don't know how close that move was ever in terms of materializing. But for me, it can't be Gordon that comes in to replace Diaz. For me, that's a downgrade. I'm not trying to sound rude or harsh. I've got very high expectations of my club, and I feel like we've done such great business. I don't think Anthony Gordon's on that same wavelength, but that's just my opinion. A lot of fans will disagree with that, but I do feel like we have to be very smart. And I think when you've got a player like Rodrygo available, he's someone that could definitely hit the ground running. He probably has something to prove, so he'll have a chip on his shoulder, and he'll want to prove the world that he's world class, and he'll want to do that at Liverpool, hopefully. So fingers crossed. But right now, we're just waiting on someone making a good enough bid for Luis Diaz, and once that happens, then we can start planning and seeing who fits the puzzle and who will come in to replace him. But right now, it's clear that Ekitike is going to come in to join Liverpool, which is very, very exciting to see. Stuart says, "Thank you for your time. Good night. Appreciate your comments. Thank you for joining the show." Asim from Born and Red, big up yourself, Asim. He says, "This stream has just come up on my feed. Support the brother by liking the stream. Big up us, Asim. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. So I appreciate that as always." Um, Kenny says Gordon would definitely go to Liverpool. I have to admit that, but I hope he stays at Newcastle. As in, he would love to go to Liverpool. Yes, of course he would, but I don't want him to join my club. Um, I just don't think he's good enough. So even last season, fun enough, I don't even think he was your best winger last season. I'd probably say Jacob Murphy had a better season than Anthony Gordon. And I'd go far as to say Harvey Barnes had a better season than him as well. So there's no way I'd want to sign Gordon based on what he showed last season. I'm not just being lazy to say because he had a poor season, I don't want him at all. From his Everton days, I always thought he was erratic in terms of his end product. He has improved on that sort of game whilst being at Newcastle, but I don't feel like he's worth the money because you guys will probably want 80, 90 million for him. For me, yeah, that's not happening. That's way above the valuation that we hold for Gordon, in my opinion. So only time will tell. Let's see what happens. Um, Stuart says, "Is there any rule regarding homegrown talent?" So of course we have to meet a quota in terms of homegrown players. Um, we can only register a maximum of 17 non-homegrown players, and the maximum number of players you can register is 25. So we have to try and make sure that we meet those guidelines. If we don't have enough sort of homegrown players, we'll have to reduce the amount of non-homegrown players. So you kind of have to balance it out. Uh, but I think Liverpool will be fine. Um, with Gay possibly being a new signing, that will definitely help. And we've got a lot of players that are quite young, so under 21, so they don't have to be registered as part of that 25. So we should be fine in terms of meeting the metrics, but there's always a way around it. Wolves hardly have any homegrown players. They've got players full of players from Portugal and Brazil, so they make it work. I'm sure Liverpool can do it as well. Um, as Wax says, Ozzy, who do you think is most likely to win Player of the Season in the Premier League? Salah or Verts or somebody else from LFC? I think he'll be Salah again. I think he'll just be spurred on by what we achieved last season, and I think he'll be raring to go and try and do better as well. Try and break more records because he's very driven by that, and I think he'll want to prove that he's still the main guy at Liverpool, despite all these big players coming through. I think he'll still want to let the world know that he's still here. He's still the guy, and he deserves to be, one of our top leading players in the team. So I think it'll be Salah next season. Stuart says Gordon is going to be like Downing. Downing was a poor signing, wasn't he? Obviously, different type of players. Downing was a left-footed player, but yeah, I get what you mean. Dulusti says I went to buy some dinner, came back, and Ozzy's still alive and kicking right now, Steve. But yeah, we're about to close the show now. So, we've got another comment here from Mazzy. Mazzy says, Ozzy, after Ekitike, how many more players are we going to sign, and how many more players are we going to sell? So. My prediction in terms of signing, I think we'll sign a striker, a left winger, and a centre back. So three more, including Ekitike. Um, in terms of selling, I think Nunez will go. I think Diaz will go. I don't want Elliot to go, but I think he will end up going. In terms of midfielders, I have an inkling that we may sell Bajcetic, but the reason I can't say it with confidence because he's currently injured right now, and I don't know how long he's out for. So if he's out for a couple of months, then that unfortunately puts him out from moving to another club. But maybe Bajcetic. McConnell, I think will end up staying. He'll be like our sixth choice midfielder because I don't think we'll sign another midfielder, even though that would be my dream to sign another midfielder to strengthen that department. But I don't think it will happen. And in terms of your defenders, we sold Kwanzaa, so he's gone. Gomez will stay. We'll probably sign another centre back. Simicas could be a player that departs. He was linked with a move to Leeds United a few weeks ago, so maybe that resurfaces again. And in terms of right back, I don't think we'll see any right back. And goalkeepers, we sold Kelleher. We've also sold. No, we've loaned out Harvey Davis. We've bought Woodman. We've got Philly now, and we've got Allison. So those will be the few players that from the first team that will be sold, in my opinion. So let's see what happens. But and Ben Doak as well. I think Ben Doak will possibly be sold as well. A lot of interest in the young Scottish wingers. I think he will depart this summer. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. A longer show than I had expected, but with great comments and great engagement from you guys, it's only right that we take our time and discuss these topics. I'll try and give a shout out to everyone involved today. So shout out to Kieran, shout out to Mazzy, to Adam, to Oz and Kabak, big up yourself as always, to Azrak, Kieran, Hamza, to who else we've got? Raji Painting. Also got who else do we have? Apologies if I have Mr. Deluded Steve, Spirit of LFC fans. We've also got Chris, big up Chris. Uh, we've got Laminos, big up yourself, Laminos. Big up to Sahin Unal. Thank you for your comments earlier on. Big up to Stewart's. Big up to Kenny. Big up to Asim from Born and Red. Appreciate you commenting today. And yeah, that is it for today, guys. Just got a comment here from someone saying thank you, sir. Big up yourself, Stuart. Thank you for your comment. I think you're new to the channel. So if you are new to the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We'll be doing lots of transfer related content in this sort of off season slash preseason period. And then once the season starts, we'll be getting the ball rolling. We'll be doing a lot more shows going forward. In terms of upcoming content, nothing scheduled for tomorrow, but if we get any official news regarding Ekitike, which I have an inkling we might, do expect an impromptu show tomorrow. It will probably take place around 11 p.m. time, 10 p.m. That's my kind of range, in terms of what time I do my shows. So best thing to do is hit that notification bell so you know what time I go live, and follow me on social media for all the latest updates. You can follow me at Aussie.ftp on Instagram, and you can also follow me at Aussie_FTP on X/Twitter. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.